Chapter 274. Only on the second day did the city lord of City learn of the death of the guard commander, Leon. He had brought along 2 experienced transcendent constables to chase after an ordinary person, but to no avail. The city lord of City was furious and sent people to ask about it. Only then did he discover the corpses of 3 transcendent cultivators near the border of City. Dying under the hands of 3 transcendent cultivators was nothing. Even if they died on the way to catch an ordinary person, it was understandable. It was nothing more than some political enemy secretly making a move, wanting to use Qin Yinmin as a spearhead to stab him and the forces behind him. This kind of thing was not rare. But what really frightened the city lord was that the 3 transcendent cultivators chasing after Qin Yinmin seemed to have died from the plague. Its appearance was almost exactly the same as those who had died of the plague. All along, transcendent cultivators were the backbone of the resistance against the plague. It could even be said that they were the only positive force. But now, this kind of plague, could it be that it had already touched the transcendent level and could harm transcendent cultivators? Once even transcendent cultivators were in danger, one could imagine how bad the situation would be at that time. It was just that it was impossible to determine whether this situation was really caused by the plague, or if it was caused by the plague after death. Or perhaps it was deliberately arranged like this by someone. Because it was an isolated case, there was no final conclusion. But the city lord City still did not dare to be negligent and immediately reported to the Rizhao prefecture. Because the plague had already begun to affect him. Because even if he was a transcendent cultivator, even if he had a high position, there was still the possibility of him encountering danger. When it came to his own safety, it was no longer about how many people died in a certain town or how many people on a certain street were infected with the plague. Death was no longer just a cold number on a piece of paper. And it seemed that they had already walked to his door. Terrifying footsteps could be heard. So this time, he was faster than anyone else and his actions were more decisive than anyone else. Although the plague had already spread to Redtail County, the poison was still shallow. At least in Songfeng City, the people's hearts were still relatively stable. They only set up roadblocks in the direction of Rizhao Prefecture to prevent people from Rizhao Prefecture from coming. World Tower was located in the northern part of Songfeng City. Rather than calling it an assassin organization, it looked more like a restaurant from the outside. There were people coming and going. It was very lively. For an assassin organization, this was of course very strange. But when he thought of the fact that a killer organization with such a flamboyant name like World Tower, and the fact that this organization had trained a killer like Su Xiuxing, he felt that it was not difficult to understand why a killer organization would be located in a busy city. After roaming the Jianghu for so many years, there must be some people that you dislike. There must be something that you can't forget. But you have a good temper, or perhaps you have too many concerns. So there's nothing you can do. When Jiang Wang walked into World Tower, a person came up to him and said, this person's appearance was rather ordinary. He belonged to the type that would not be found in a crowd. In a sense, he was quite suitable for the identity of an assassin. So, Jiang Wang asked, so you need us? This person slapped his chest and said heroically, our World Tower is strong and powerful. We have countless experts and ruthless people. Sabers, spears, staffs, halberds, fists, palms, fingers, claws, and knees. He was proficient in everything. 3 years old, worthy of your trust. So your World Tower has only been open for 3 years? Jiang Wang was not too surprised that World Tower had only been open for 3 years. It was more surprising that this killer organization could be open for 3 years. 3 years is not short. This person said, 1 gives birth to 2, 2 gives birth to 3, and 3 gives birth to all things. 3 years is equivalent to countless years. Customer. The corner of Jiang Wang's mouth twitched. Did killer organizations nowadays have waiters? It's like this. Jiang Wang said, there is indeed someone who makes me very angry. Come, customer, this way please. This person suddenly raised his voice and leaned close to Jiang Wang's ear, saying, our organization is very particular about rules. When discussing business, We must not be in a crowd because we have to protect the customer's privacy. What he said made sense, but he led the way in front, bringing Jiang Wang out of the crowded lobby and into a private room. Then they sat down in the host's seat. Hearing the loud noise outside, Jiang Wang wondered what kind of privacy such terrible soundproofing could protect. However, this person had already said eagerly, "Customer, feel free to give me your mission." His eagerness was like that of a brothel keeper who had not received a customer for several months. "How should I address you?" Jiang Wang asked politely. "Just call me Asu." This person said, "Customer, feel free to give me your mission." "Oh, Asu." Jiang Wang continued to be polite. "What is your position in World Tower?" "Everyone who joins my tower is my brother. Although I am the #1 killer in the eastern region, I am not constrained by my identity. I run errands and entertain customers. Occasionally, I also work part-time." As Asu spoke, he suddenly changed the topic and brought it back to the original topic. "Customer, feel free to give me your orders." This strong sense of unreliability made Jiang Wang fall silent for a while before continuing the topic. He gathered his emotions and said, "Someone scolded me," then turned around and ran away. "I am still angry, and my hatred can't be dispelled." "This," Asu said awkwardly. "Just because he scolded you, you want to hire an assassin to kill him?" He was even ready to leave his chair. How big of a deal could such a trivial matter become? What a waste of time. "I will pay 20 Dao origin stones." Jiang Wang added indifferently, "Deposit." "This is too much." Asu slammed the table and stood up. "What is that thief's name? Where does he live? I will definitely take his head for you." "Su Xiuxing," Jiang Wang said. Asu sat back down awkwardly. "His surname is Su, huh?" Jiang Wang looked at him with interest. "Asu, you don't know him?" "I know him. Why don't you just call him out and let him talk to me?" "To be honest," Asu said, "this person has already betrayed the organization and is no longer in World Tower." Jiang Wang said in surprise, "Your World Tower is such a powerful assassin organization. Didn't you hunt down the traitor to death?" "This is what you don't understand. Our World Tower is in the assassin business. We have to make money from killing people. Who will pay for killing Su Xiuxing? We can't do things that make us lose money. Even if it's to hunt down the traitor? You really have principles." Jiang Wang nodded and pointed at himself. "Don't I pay now?" Asa finally felt embarrassed, but he still said reluctantly, "He's now in another organization. It's not easy to deal with him. After all, it's unavoidable to leave some friendship between people of the same trade. As the saying goes, don't go too far when you meet someone." "Oh," Jiang Wang suddenly understood. "You can't afford to offend that organization." Asa said angrily, "That's the doorless hell. A lunatic who even dares to kill a country's border general." This was the second time Jiang Wang heard about the doorless hell. It seemed that Yingguan had developed well after leaving the U-Nation. But just as Cheng Gengsheng said, he was dancing on the tip of a knife. However, he was surprised that Su Xiuxing could enter the doorless hell. He didn't look like he had the kind of talent that Yingguan would take a fancy to. Jiang Wang sighed. "If that's the case, I can only let this big enemy go for now. Most of the things in the world don't go as planned." Asu pretended to sigh and asked, "Customer, think about it again. Hasn't anyone else scolded you before?" Jiang Wang. Chapter 275. As expected of World Tower, an assassin like Su Xiuxing didn't seem to be a lone wolf either. He was organized and worked in groups. "There's some difficult things, but I don't know if you can do it. Please tell me." Su patted his chest again, as if he wasn't the one who was troubled by the hell door. "World Tower can do anything. Do you dare to go to the palace?" Jiang Wang asked. In the Yang Kingdom, the palace without a prefix naturally referred to the palace of the Yang Kingdom's king. Su, the #1 assassin in the eastern region, was shocked. "Are you trying to hire someone to assassinate the king?" Seeing that Jiang Wang was looking at him like he was an idiot, he asked awkwardly, "What do you want to do?" Firstly, if it was something as serious as hiring someone to assassinate the king, it wouldn't be brought up so openly. Secondly, How could he not know if World Tower had the ability to assassinate the king? Help me deliver a letter. Don't reveal that it's from me. To whom? It's best if you can deliver it to the king. If not, deliver it to the person closest to the king. What's in the letter? Jiang Wang looked at him and didn't say anything. Asu shrank his head. I know how to protect the customer's secret. 30 Dao Yuan stones to deliver this letter. My only request is that no one knows that this letter is related to me. Jiang Wang took out 30 Dao Yuan stones and placed them in front of Asu. Don't worry. Asu counted the Dao Yuan stones happily. I don't know who you are. It was just delivering a letter. Even if it was to be delivered to the palace, it wasn't too difficult. Jiang Wang didn't expect this letter to be delivered directly to the king of the Yang Kingdom. But as long as it reached the palace, he thought that the king of the Yang Kingdom would definitely take note of this letter. There shouldn't be any king of a small kingdom who was qualified to remain indifferent to the white-boned sex Holy Lord's secret coveting. The reason why he had to deliver the warning through World Tower was that his current strength wasn't enough to face the white-boned sect directly. Jiang Wang arrived at World Tower on the afternoon of the second day after he entered Songfeng City. On the same day, he left Redtail County and rushed back to Rizhao County. He had purposely entered Songfeng City for two reasons. Firstly, it was to recuperate and recover his energy. Secondly, it was to think of a way to alert the imperial court of the Yang Kingdom. As for finding the World Tower, it was all done on a whim. He originally wanted to ask Hu Xiaoming about hiring someone to assassinate him, but seeing that Asu didn't seem to know him at all, he gave up. After all, Hu Xiaoming was already dead. A dead person was like an extinguished lamp. There was not much point in investigating. The situation in Qingyang town was improving. The number of new infected people was decreasing, and the number of infected people in the quarantine area was also recovering under the efforts of the two medical cultivators. Of course, there was no way to avoid death. After Yang Court's full investigation, they had a relatively clear understanding of the plague. Generally speaking, there were 3 ways to spread the plague. The main way of transmission was through fleas and mosquito bites. Rats were the main culprits, but these little things that carried the plague were also extremely evil. Secondly, it was contagious between people. Breathing could cause infection. Lastly, it was contagious. But the plague that occurred in the Yang Kingdom was different. The effect of eliminating rats and fleas was not great, because the plague was transmitted to humans from the beginning, and the speed of infection was much faster than normal plague. They still didn't know about the plague bell's existence. Thus, every infected person was a source of infection. From a cold perspective, death was also a way to reduce this source of infection. In fact, if the plague had not already spread to 3 counties and spread throughout the country, there might have been voices calling for the extermination of Jia City. Returning to Qingyang town itself, under Jiang Wang's decisive and powerful actions, the entire Qingyang town was the town that had the most successful in resisting the plague in Jia City. The number of new infected people and deaths was much lower than the other towns, and the number of cured people was also much higher. This was assuming that the other towns didn't hide anything. Duguxiao, Xiangqian, and the others all thought that Jiang Wang would relax a lot, but he worked even harder than before. Every day, other than necessary official business, he cultivated. Dao techniques and swordsmanship went in a cycle. After this period of fighting against the plague, the small team centered around Jiang Wang was preliminarily tempered, which could be considered one of the few good things. But the fear in Jiang Wang's heart couldn't be shared with anyone. In the blessed land of Holy Mountain in the great illusionary land, Jiang Wang sat cross-legged. He actually discovered the problem after chasing the snake-faced man. He killed the snake-faced man, but neglected the plague bell when he counted the spoils of war. From the later results, of course, it was a good thing. The plague bell was extremely dangerous, and it was very likely that it could be used as a carrier for the White Bone Path's Holy Lord to attack from afar. But for Jiang Wang, the terrifying part of this matter was his neglect. How could he have neglected the plague bell? Although he wasn't very meticulous, nor was he far-sighted, this plague bell brought him a lot of trouble in battle. He shouldn't and couldn't have neglected it, but he still neglected it. This was very frightening. It was as if there was another consciousness in his consciousness that interfered with his thoughts. Or rather, there was an existence that could interfere with his will. Because of the existence of this possibility, he couldn't discuss this matter with anyone. Even if he was hiding in the great illusionary land, he wasn't sure if he could really have a safe and quiet environment to think in. But this was already the only hope he had. He didn't have any seniors or powerful blood relatives. He could only count on this mysterious great illusionary land. He repeatedly thought about this matter in the great illusionary land. In order to prevent his consciousness from being affected, he could only think here. First, he was sure that he wasn't worrying for nothing. Then, he carefully and slowly examined himself. What had gone wrong? What could possibly go wrong? What had go wrong? This was a painful process. In the end, he placed his suspicions on the heavenly palace. To be precise, it was on the dark abyss candle. After all, it was something of the white bone path. He had never let his guard down. Earlier, when Maplewood City was destroyed, the dark abyss candle gave him an extremely strong warning. He had also once suspected whether the dark abyss candle had its own intelligence. Before Maplewood City was destroyed, he was extremely nervous. Now that he thought about it, was it also the influence of the dark abyss candle? At that time, it could make him nervous. Now, it wasn't impossible for him to ignore it. Although the influence of these two times seemed to be to let him avoid danger, the results were indeed so. But Jiangwang definitely didn't want his actions to be interfered with by some strange existence. At that time, when he was still very weak, he was very resistant to the so-called guidance that Miaoyu had imposed on him. No matter what he did, no matter what consequences he would face, he hoped that it would be his own choice. If he was wrong, he would admit it, and he would never let anyone choose for him. If the problem was indeed with the dark abyss candle, then he had to face one thing. Since the dark abyss candle appeared in his body due to the attraction of the white bone seed, it had been living in Jiang Wang's heavenly palace for so long. What exactly had it done? At least, from creating tension to making him ignore it. This seemed to mean that the influence that the dark abyss candle could exert was expanding. Chapter 276. It was indeed a very frightening thing to have one's will be affected by a mysterious existence. Especially for Jiang Wang's current strength, it was difficult for him to deal with this kind of crisis. He did not ask for help from Chung Gung Sheng through the great illusionary land. If he did, it would be easily detected, even in the great illusionary land. For Jiang Wang, it was already a habit to face difficult problems alone. From the Zhuang state to the Qi state, he was alone. He had no one to rely on. No matter how difficult it was, his only choice was to face it. First of all, this kind of influence was a change on the spiritual level. Jiang Wang sorted out his body. The only Dao technique that could influence the spiritual level was Hua Hai. Hua Hai's Dao technique was based on wood poison. It was not a Dao technique that focused on the spiritual level. The crown of thorns could be stacked on top of Hua Hai. Treasures that could help the spiritual level included the Mirage Pearl that he traded with Zhu Biqiong and the red makeup mirror that he got from Hu Xiaoming. These were the only things he could rely on to deal with this kind of situation. But he knew that Hua Hai would not be able to handle this. After all, this was not the direction of this Dao technique. Then, if the one who influenced the spiritual level was the dark candle, Jiang Wang was 90% sure now. The other 10% was out of caution. Then the most direct way to deal with the dark candle was to deal with it. It might be possible to use Dao energy to attack the dark candle directly, but it was only a last resort. Because the dark candle stopped in the heavenly palace and used the heavenly palace as a battlefield, regardless of the outcome, the result was not optimistic. Could he find a way to ignite the dark candle? The dark candle had automatically ignited and shrunk after burning. The candle would eventually disappear. Perhaps the dark candle would do the same. Delaying the dark candle until later was a solution. For example, Jiang Wang could try to open the heaven and earth door now. After opening the heaven and earth door, it would be a new world. What was difficult now might not be difficult in the future. But there was a problem. The dark candle's influence on him was increasing. For now, the dark candle made him temporarily ignore the bell of plague. But when he saw the Bell of Plague, he remembered it. This meant that the power that he had ignored wasn't particularly strong yet. However, if he continued to ignore it, wouldn't he be able to make Jiang Wang ignore the Netherworld candle itself? Just thinking about it made him shudder. If he wanted to solve the problem of the Netherworld candle, the sooner the better. Jiang Wang considered this matter thoroughly in the great illusionary realm's 33rd Spirit Mountain Blessed Land. In the end, he placed his hopes on the red makeup mirror. Given Yangming's current condition, the only thing that could help him in terms of mental power was the mysterious red makeup mirror. To be more precise, it was the world in the red mirror. He had originally planned to explore this unknown object after he was more confident, but now he had no choice but to try it in advance. After all, compared to the Netherworld candle that was inextricably linked to the white bone path, the red makeup mirror seemed kinder. Since the decision had been made, there was no need to hesitate. Jiang Wang immediately exited the great illusionary realm. Then, he took out the red makeup mirror and looked at it carefully. After nourishing it with his Tao energy for these few days, he did not have to worry about not being able to use it. There were two ways to enter the mirror world. One was to enter with one's physical body, and the other was to enter with one's soul. The former was Hu Xiaoming's previous method. He hid in the mirror world and only used the mirror image to confuse his opponent. Jiang Wang first tried this method. With a thought, he appeared in the mirror world. What he saw was a vast expanse of whiteness. There was nothing else. Where he stood was only one step away. At the same time that he appeared here, he could feel that he was controlling some kind of power. His field of vision was expanded. However, this expansion of his field of vision was not in the mirror, but outside the mirror. In the mirror world, he could still only see one step around him. However, outside the mirror, his field of vision was expanded. His house in Qingyang Town was behind the town hall. He saw the tables, chairs, furnishings, and even a newly cut flower in a vase that he probably wouldn't have noticed in the past. Outside, he saw that Xiao Xiao was still working hard at the table. He could even see what she was writing clearly. He saw Zhu Biqiong sitting alone in the room. She was holding the ball of fortune and disaster and crying silently. She usually looked so carefree, but when there was no one around, she was so different. He saw Zhang Hai fiddling with something in the kitchen. The firewood in the stove was burning with smoke. Upon closer inspection, he was actually using this pot to temporarily refine elixirs. He saw that the eyes of Forward opened, and he looked over with some confusion. Jiang Wang retracted his gaze. He had roughly figured out the first use of the red makeup mirror, which was to enter the mirror world with his physical body. Then, he could use the power of the red makeup mirror to observe the surrounding environment. He had tried it before. The current limit of this distance was a radius of 1 mile. Jiang Wang guessed that this distance might be related to the space he was currently standing in. When his physical body was in the mirror world, he could still create a fake mirror image within a radius of 1 mile. The effect was similar to what Hu Xiaoming had used before. The reason why Hu Xiaoming could pretend to be a miner and use illusions to delay Shi Zichu in Jia City was because of the illusion of the fishing sea tower itself. At that time, the red makeup mirror had the effect of amplification. When he dealt with Jiang Wang in the Hu family's courtyard, he used the mirror image ability of the red makeup mirror. This method was naturally good, but it didn't help Jiang Wang's current predicament. He tried for a while and realized that he couldn't walk out. So, he gave up and left the mirror world. Next, he tried the second method, which was to enter the mirror world with his divine soul. When his divine soul entered the mirror world, his physical body still held onto the red makeup mirror. This feeling was similar to entering the great illusionary realm, but it was different. When he entered the great illusionary realm, the moonstar power was the bridge, and the mysterious and vast world was the riverbank. When he crossed the bridge and reached the shore, he felt very steady and assured. When his divine soul entered the mirror world of the red makeup mirror, Jiang Wang's first feeling was coldness. It was as if heavy snow was falling in the dead of winter. When he appeared in the form of his divine soul, he felt as if he was about to be frozen. Amidst the howling cold wind, a cold voice cut through like a knife. Pitiful beauty in front of the mirror. Red makeup kills the person in the mirror. Past the flying snow tribulation, Jiang Wang realized that he was already in a snowy plain. At the same time, he felt that his divine soul's return route had been cut off. This experience was very strange. Part of his spiritual will was still in the world outside the mirror, while the other part was in the mirror. But now, the part in the mirror couldn't return to the outside world, unless he passed the flying snow tribulation. In other words, if he failed to pass the tribulation, this part of his divine soul would be lost forever. At that time, he wouldn't be able to solve Ming Zhu's problem. It would be wishful thinking to even be able to maintain the current situation. How to repair the damage to his divine soul? With the things he came into contact with now, it was impossible. Moreover, if Ming Zhu really had a problem and really tried to influence and change his will, then when faced with a damaged and incomplete divine soul, what unpredictable consequences would there be? In a situation where he didn't have enough strength and resources, he could only take the risk and explore the red makeup mirror. But as soon as he entered, he encountered a tribulation. When the time comes, the heavens and earth will work together. But when the time comes, the hero won't be free. Chapter 277. If Jiang Wang knew that Hu Xiaoming had not dared to enter the mirror world with his spirit after obtaining the red makeup mirror for so many years, perhaps he would be more cautious today. However, there were no ifs. The red makeup mirror was obtained by killing someone, and no one told him about the taboos. Therefore, he could only face the tribulation. Jiang Wang trekked alone in the vast snowy plains. In the cold wind, his brows, eyes, body, and intent became more and more solid and clear. He had always been decisive. Since his spirit was trapped, he did not hesitate to pour all of his spirit energy into the red makeup mirror world. Since he had to face the tribulation, he could not be indecisive. He did not know what the so-called flying snow tribulation was, but he knew that he could not pass it with his incomplete spirit energy. If his spirit was injured now, what was the point of talking about the future? He had no place to call for help, and no one to call for help. Jiang Wang didn't lack ruthlessness in his bones, especially in the face of danger. Either his spirit would be destroyed, and his body would disappear, or he would face the tribulation and break through it. The wind and snow were even colder. In a vast snowy world, the chill was devastating. Jiang Wang activated the vermilion bird body tempering mantra and simulated the effects of the vermilion bird body tempering mantra in the snowy plains where his spirit was. The body formed by his spirit seemed to have a furnace inside. It was hot and warm. The chill was temporarily dispelled. The world seemed to have the body formed by his spirit as the boundary. One side was cold and the other side was warm. At this moment, Jiang Wang's almost frozen mind regained its liveliness. He began to think about the way out of this snowy plains. However, it was vast and boundless. No matter front, back, left, or right, he could not see the end. There was not even a tree. It was all mountains and snow, and there were no markings. Looking at the sky, it was clear blue. It was like a huge and flawless water mirror embedded in the sky. There were no clouds, no sun, and no light came from nowhere. However, the real problem was there was no sun, and thus there was no direction. Jiang Wang used the remembrance grass, but after a long time, it could not take shape. This was troublesome. However, he was not discouraged. Judging from his previous experience, the flying snow tribulation in the red makeup mirror should be a test. The result might be related to the degree of control of the red makeup mirror. Since it was a test, it definitely wouldn't be a death tribulation. If the red makeup mirror was going to kill anyone who obtained it, then there was no need for it to trigger a calamity in such a way. Perhaps there was no direction, no way out. Or rather, the way out was right there. He didn't need to rely on searching, nor could he find it. Jiang Wang was enlightened. He pressed a flame flower on the ground. The snow melted, revealing the hard, dry ground. Jiang Wang stomped on the floor, making a banging sound. The frozen earth was like a drum, It sounded thick and heavy. He stood there like this, fixed in place, and began to carefully comprehend the mysteries of the vermilion bird body tempering mantra. The vermilion bird was in the south and belonged to the fire element. He specialized in fire and wood, so he had some understanding of fire Tao. Scorching and violent flames could also represent warmth and light, and the use of these was dependent on one's heart. At this moment, he was using the warmth of the fire to resist the cold of the flying snow tribulation. After an unknown period of time, from the blue mirror-like sky, large snowflakes drifted down. There was quite a bit of distance between them, so they weren't too dense. Jiang Wang reached out to catch a snowflake. He couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air, feeling a bone-piercing chill. The snowflakes drifting down at this time were much colder than the snow that existed in this snowfield before. It seemed to be able to directly freeze the soul. Flying snow tribulation. Flying snow tribulation. The tribulation was flying snow. It's best not to be touched by these snowflakes, Jiang Wang thought. He raised his head, looking straight at the sky. He saw that the blue heavenly mirror seemed to be reflecting something, and watched the snow fall mercilessly. He was the only one in the world. He moved. His right hand was like a sword, and he seemed to be dancing with it. He flew and turned in the flying snow, but not a single snowflake touched him. The snow fell faster and faster, thicker and denser. Jiang Wang spun faster and faster, sprinting faster and faster. For a moment, the entire snowfield was filled with Jiang Wang's figure dancing with his sword, and the heavy snow fell. The heavy snow drifted down, falling densely. Sword lights flashed left and right, caught in a fierce battle. The sword moves were like lightning and frost. This person used snow as his enemy. After an unknown period of time, the snow finally became so dense that there was no space for anyone to dodge. A flame flower bloomed above his head, melting the snowflakes. A snowflake melted into a ball of water, pouring down on his head. Jiang Wang knew that this water could not be touched, so he hurriedly dodged. He kept making hand seals with both hands, and the ivy snakes drilled out of the ground, intertwining above his head. With the ivy snakes as a roof, could he avoid the wind and snow? The answer quickly appeared. Almost at the same time as the snowflakes drifted down, the ivy snakes dissipated into wood elemental energy. This flying snow tribulation seemed to be able to restrain Tao techniques. Of course, the defensive Tao techniques Jiang Wang was proficient and were not powerful, or perhaps it was because of this. Since none of the techniques worked, Jiang Wang simply sat down cross-legged. The azure dragon refined his body, and the Tao of wood was full of vitality. The vermilion bird refined his body, and the Tao of fire was the beginning of life. The white tiger refined his body, and the Tao of metal was decisive in killing. The black tortoise refined his body, and the Tao of water was vast. The cycle of life and death, and the four spirits converged. And the flying snow tribulation seemed to be never-ending. The flow of time, the shifting of space, all of these could only be reflected with reference objects. In this silent, eternal snowfield, time and space seemed to have lost their meaning. At first, he could still hear the wind and feel even the softest snowflake. Slowly, he could no longer hear or feel anything. Jiang Wang had become a snowman. The snow deepened, thickened, and gradually buried him. He became one with the snowfield, as if he had become one of the snowfield. Perhaps the souls lost in the snowfield world in the mirror were themselves a part of the flying snow tribulation. Now, Jiang Wang would also become one of them. The first to discover the problem was Xiao Xiao. She came to find Jiang Wang to report town affairs. She could deal with most of them herself, but she needed Jiang Wang to make decisions on matters related to Jia City and the Four Seas Business Alliance. But Jiang Wang entered his room and did not come out for 10 whole days. It was normal for cultivators to enter seclusion without knowing the time. However, Jiang Wang did not inform her in advance, and the plague in Xingyang town had not completely passed, so it should not be the time for seclusion. On the 11th day, Xiao Xiao could not help but directly push the door open and enter the room. As Jiang Wang's personal maid, she was the only person in Qingyang town who could enter Jiang Wang's room without his permission, without causing misunderstandings. After all, she had cleaned up Jiang Wang's room for many days. Seeing Jiang Wang holding a mirror in his hand and sitting stiffly on the bed, she was almost scared out of her wits, if she had not heard his faint heartbeat after probing. The heartbeat was very weak and slow, but still existed. She realized that Jiang Wang might have a problem with his cultivation, but she knew nothing about it and did not know where to start. After thinking about it, she quietly went to find Zhu Biqiang. Originally, among the other extraordinary cultivators in Qingyang town, the two medical cultivators sent by the Zhanggenjia should be the most useful in this situation. But Xiao Xiao was not familiar with them and could not trust them. She even lacked trust in the Zhanggenjia. Previously, there was an old man in the Zhanggenjia who went against Jiang Wang and was slapped away by Jiang Wang. She remembered it clearly. If these two medical cultivators had evil intentions, among the remaining three extraordinary cultivators on Jiang Wang's side, although Zhang Hai was almost crazy about alchemy, he still had a rough understanding of medicine. But in Xiao Xiao's view, he only had the unattainable elixir in his heart and lacked loyalty to Jiang Wang. At this critical time, she could not trust him. As for Xiang Qian, she would not consider him. Not long ago, Xiang Qian had publicly questioned Jiang Wang's lack of efforts for Qingyang town. Xiao Xiao was a vigilant person and lacked trust in the world. The reason why she chose to ask Zhu Biqiang for help was that she was learning martial arts from Zhu Biqiang and was relatively familiar with her and understood her innocent character. Secondly, she knew that there was not much interest between Zhu Biqiang and Jiang Wang, and Zhu Biqiang was not a person who lacked resources. The possibility of causing danger was relatively low. After weighing the pros and cons, she thought this was the safest choice. When Zhu Biqiang saw Jiang Wang's current situation, she was also somewhat at a loss. She tried to give Jiang Wang Daoyuan and gave him the elixir used by the sea fishing tower to strengthen his foundation, but it was to no avail. Jiang Wang sat there the whole time, as if he was a clay sculpture. After all, Zhu Biqiang was a cultivator in the reaching heaven realm. She knew that she could not touch the mirror in Jiang Wang's hand, but other than that, she did not know what to do. Seeing that she was also at a loss, Xiao Xiao became more and more nervous and could not help but ask, "Should we ask the medical cultivators?" With Zhu Biqiang guarding by his side, Jiang Wang's safety could be guaranteed. This is not a problem that the medical cultivators can solve. Zhu Biqiang shook her head and pointed to the small mirror in Jiang Wang's hand. He is now trapped in this mirror. I am not familiar with the situation and dare not rashly enter, for fear of making a fool of myself. In the current situation, he can only rely on himself to come out. Then can he come out by himself? Xiao Xiao was anxious, but soon she said, "Yes, Master can definitely come out." "Yes," Zhu Biqiang said, "Jiang Wang is the strongest cultivator I have ever seen in the reaching heaven realm." She did not know how this would help him come out of the mirror, but it was a comfort to her, whether it was for Xiao Xiao or for herself. It is useless to stay here. Let's go out and think of a way. When it came to the field of extraordinary beings, Zhu Biqiang was the most experienced. Therefore, at this moment, she seemed more mature. Dugu Xiao was already somewhat at a loss. When they pushed open the door, the two of them were stunned, because Xiang Qian was outside the door. Obviously, Dugu Xiao secretly asked Zhu Biqiang to come and see Jiang Wang, not wanting anyone to know that something was wrong. However, she could not hide it from him. "What happened to Jiang Wang?" Xiang Qian asked directly. The atmosphere suddenly became tense. Xiao Xiao bit her lower lip and did not speak. Zhu Biqiang also secretly prepared an illusion technique. Seeing their vigilant appearance, Xiang Qian reacted. He took a step back, showing that he had no hostility. Then, he directly turned around, his back facing the door. Without caring whether it was dirty or not, he sat on the ground. "Miss Dugu," he said with his back facing Xiao Xiao and Zhu Biqiang. "In this place, you're the person Jiang Wang trusts the most. From today onwards, I will guard this place. Who can enter this room and who cannot? You have the final say." Xiang Qian was not a person who was very good at expressing himself, persuading people to die, persuading people to give up, except when he was disheartened. When manager Qian of the Four Seas Business Alliance came to question him, he only said one sentence. He actually felt that explaining was meaningless. He did not feel that Jiang Wang would believe him, or that he would choose to believe him under the pressure of the Four Seas Business Alliance. The reason why he explained himself was probably because of the child who ate the egg and his smile. He indeed did not expect that Jiang Wang would take responsibility for this matter without hesitation. He did not even blame him. Even Zhang Hai, who was completely uninvolved, did not hide the fact that he blamed him. Those 200 Dao origin stones were said to be compensation, but was it not the trust in him? At that time, Xiang Qian did not even say a word of thanks. Now, he would not express any determination. The fact that he was sitting here was his determination. Xiao Xiao stared blankly for a while before saying, "Oh." Chapter 278. Perhaps the beginning of everything was chaos, and the end of everything would also be chaos. His soul seemed to have been frozen. Every thought was slow, difficult, and heavy. Jiang Wang had forgotten a lot of things. Gradually, he couldn't remember where he was, why he came from, and where he was going. His heart was very heavy. He wanted to slow down even more. He wanted to sleep. He was already very tired. He was like a taut string that didn't relax for a moment. He couldn't hold it in any longer. He wanted to fall down. He didn't care about anything and just fell down like this. But for some reason, there was always a faint resistance in his heart. "I'm here. What can I resist?" He thought with difficulty. "Brother, are we still going home? We don't have a home anymore." Then Brother Ruching, Brother Lingyi, Brother Zhan, Brother Tangdun, sir, are they still here? I don't know. Maybe they also escaped, but they're not in the same direction as us. Oh, then we can go find them. This world is too big. Once we're separated, we may never find them again. Then when I grow up, I'll go find them with you. Okay, brother, I'm here. I'll take you to find them. If the soul was pitch black, then in the deepest part of the soul, there was an inextinguishable fire whispering softly. The fire was faint. "I'm here. I'll take you there." The fire flickered, struggled, and was on the verge of collapse. It seemed to be extinguished at any time, but it was amazing that it was still burning. This was the original fire. It had an iron-like willpower and a rock-like persistence. There was no one in front of it and nothing behind it. It supported itself. It was on the verge of collapse, but it didn't fall and kept burning. It was burning. If it weren't for Master Jiang, how could we live? We'll never forget Master Jiang Wang's great kindness. I beg God, let Prince Jiang stay in Qingyang town forever. Lord Taoist, I pray for Master Jiang. I only hope that he can live forever and enjoy blessings forever. A voice came from somewhere and resounded in this world. Or rather, they had always existed. It was only in the world of the red makeup mirror that they became so clear. There were all sorts of names, but all of them reached Jiang Wang's ears. A child's voice prayed thus. "Bodhisattva Jiang, I wish you good health." At first, this world was pitch black, but then there was fire, and then there was light. Fire is the beginning of life. Humans use fire to cook their food, to drive away the cold, and to light up the night. Countless blessings and countless rays of light. The tiny flame deep inside Jiang Wang's soul seemed to be growing bigger and bigger. Finally, it was no longer on the verge of dying out. And Jiang Wang began to think with difficulty. His 5 senses gradually recovered. Finally, a voice sounded from the bottom of his heart. "The master of the Blessed Land Spring Cave has issued challenge. Will you accept the challenge?" Jiang Wang suddenly realized that it was already the 15th of July. It was the day of the Great Illusionary Land Challenge. As the saying goes, with a single thought, one's speed was faster than sound and lightning. However, Jiang Wang put in a lot of effort before he finally changed his mind. Accept the challenge. The cold and omnipresent power of the moon star instantly wrapped around him. His soul was directly brought into the Great Illusionary Land and appeared in front of his opponent. His soul relaxed. All the coldness, stiffness, sluggishness, and numbness all disappeared. Only after losing them did he understand how free and beautiful the original state of the soul was. Jiang Wang didn't even have time to see his opponent's appearance clearly. He hurriedly said, "Thank you." He directly admitted defeat and left the great illusionary land. Only his opponent was left there with a stunned expression. His soul that had recovered to its peak state reappeared in the world of the snowy plains in the red makeup mirror. The simulated 9 great galaxy rivers in his soul spun together, as if endless power started to surge. Jiang Wang opened his eyes and shot up to the sky from under the thick snow. He only saw the white snow under his feet and the blue sky. The snow stopped. Flying snow calamity disappears. That voice that was as cold as a blade seemed to sigh. Beauty is not old. Starting from Jiang Wang's feet, the white snow gradually disappeared. The frozen ground thawed. The spring breeze came. The green grass sprouted and swayed happily. Jiang Wang's soul turned and returned to his body in reality. He didn't have time to adapt to his body that had been stiff for so long. He fell into a dazed state. It was as if he had lost something, but also gained something. From entering the red makeup mirror at the end of June to the 15th of July, he had endured a total of 20 days in the flying snow calamity. 20 days and nights. If it weren't for his amazing perseverance and persistence, with his current strength, the fire of his soul would have been extinguished in the flying snow calamity. If it weren't for the tens of thousands of people in the entire Qingyang town, and the light spots that could be called blessings and merits that nourished and supported his soul, he wouldn't have been able to persist for so long. In the end, he waited until the day of the Great Illusionary Land's Blessed Land Challenge. He waited until the mysterious Great Illusionary Land sent out the challenge invitation. Every drink and every peck was the result of what he had done and what he had asked for. Jiang Wang felt lost for a while before he began to move his body. Fortunately, the 9 Milky Way vortexes were always rotating, and the star-twining spirit snake didn't rest. In fact, what he cared about the most was the nether candle. During this time, it stayed in the same place and didn't move. Jiang Wang instantly regained control of his body. He stepped out of bed, and his bones made a cracking sound. By the second step, his body had adapted. Bang! Fang Chong broke the door. Seeing Jiang Wang standing in front of the bed, he just blinked his dead fish eyes and said indifferently, "You're still alive." Then he turned and left. The moment he broke the door, Jiang Wang was stunned by the sharp sword qi that broke out. He had high expectations for Fang Chong, but now he found that he seemed to have underestimated this person. He cracked his neck and grinned. "My destination isn't here." When Dugu Xiao, Zhu Biqiong, and Zhang Hai heard that Jiang Wang had woken up, they came to greet him. Jiang Wang talked with them and roughly understood what had happened in the town. Then he locked himself in his room again. Since the flying snow trial was a test, there should be some gains after the test. However, the red makeup mirror didn't give any hints. Jiang Wang could only figure it out himself. He entered the red makeup mirror with his physical body again and found that the space in the mirror world had indeed become bigger. It had become a circle with a distance of 5 steps. Outside the circle was still a white haze that couldn't be crossed. Inside the circle, he could move freely. The red makeup mirror's detection range had also expanded to a limit of 5 miles. The mirror image created by the red makeup mirror could also appear in this range. Obviously, the detection range of the red makeup mirror was directly related to the space occupied by the physical body in the mirror world. 1 step would cover about 1 mile. He expected that if he entered the red makeup mirror with his spirit again, the situation would be different. However, he didn't dare to try it again, afraid that he would face a calamity. This was the importance of a master from a high sect. They could guide him in the right direction on the path of cultivation. They would also inform the disciples of the taboos and dangers of some magic tools. To a large extent, they could prevent cultivators from courting death. There was no point in talking about this now. Jiang Wang didn't forget his initial goal of entering the red makeup mirror's mirror world. The red makeup mirror's effect had become stronger, but the result didn't seem to have changed. It still didn't seem to help. However, Jiang Wang felt that the changes brought about by the flying snow trial weren't so simple. Or rather, the gains after the flying snow trial weren't just in the red makeup mirror. Then, he examined himself. 20 days had passed in the real world. What had the flying snow trial brought to him in the immeasurably long time in the snowy mirror world? Note: 1. The original sentence came from the modern poem, The First Prayer. Bodhisattva, I wish you good health. Chapter 279. The flying snow tribulation was used on the soul, so the harvest should naturally be on the soul. Jiang Wang formed a Tao seal and spread out the sea of flowers. The combination he usually used was to mix the flame flower into the sea of flowers and use the illusion flower to cover the flame flower. This allowed the sea of flowers to have destructive power. But now, an illusion flower bloomed, and when it approached his palm, it turned into a flame flower and exploded. Before it completely exploded, Jiang Wang reached out and extinguished it, and it disappeared as an illusion flower in his palm. The transition between the illusion flower and flame flower was smooth, and there was almost no obstruction. This allowed the sea of flowers and flame flower to achieve the effect of alternating between illusion and reality. As long as he practiced a little, it could be said to be a Tao technique that was better than the original one, and it could be called the sea of flame flower. What did this reflect? Was it better control of illusions? Was its essence the strengthening of the soul? Jiang Wang was deep in thought. He always had an idea about the dark candle, but could not be formed due to his lack of strength. Using the flame flower to light the dark candle in the Tongtian Palace was obviously not possible. But what if it was not a physical flame, but a soul flame? Even the heaven and earth gates would not stop the soul from entering and exiting the Tongtian Palace. He could not do it in the past, but now why not try? Originally, he could not talk about the soul power, but after passing the flying snow tribulation, it might not be so. There is no Tao technique related to the soul flame, but what if it was constructed in the form of a flame flower? He knew all the details of the flame flower by heart. It was a Tao technique he had mastered when he was in Maplewood City, and he had been using and practicing it until now without slacking. Now, he was just using his Tao energy to replace the soul power. It might not be impossible. Jiang Wang's mind sank into the Tongtian Palace. He looked at the dark candle with his mind's perspective. As the true spirit of the Tao vein, the star-twining spirit snake seemed to have some spiritual perception, and it was half-hanging in a star river spiral, no longer swimming. And the dark candle was motionless, as if nothing had changed. Jiang Wang tried to feel his own soul power. In the past, it was useless, but now there was a wonderful change. He used a bit of soul power as a fire seed, and used the flame flower to activate it. Maybe the soul flame's construction rules were different from the flame flowers. However, the way to construct the flame flower depended on the natural formation of the fire elemental flower. In other words, Jiang Wang only needed to provide a direction, or rather a primer, for the power of the divine soul to be born naturally. A crimson flame was born. Born in Tongtian Palace. This color was pure and scorching, as if it had the determination to burn away at any moment. It did not coexist with any darkness. Jiang Wang controlled it and slowly approached the netherworld candle. Close, the netherworld candle was lit. For the first time, it was lit by Jiang Wang instead of spontaneously combusting. It was the heart flame that lit the netherworld candle. The netherworld candle melted at a speed visible to the naked eye. At the same time, just like before, a secret technique appeared in his mind. This time, it was the white bone's secret technique, yin-yang reflection. After using this secret technique, any Tao technique that was used would be imbued with a netherworld reflection, resulting in double the effects. For example, one flame flower would turn into two with the support of the yin-yang reflection. However, it was still limited to the white bone path secret technique. If it was added to the white bone path secret technique system, it would naturally be a very powerful secret technique. However, up until now, The white bone path secret techniques that Jiang Wang had mastered were only the flesh-soul return technique and the white bone escape technique. He did not need the support of the yin-yang reflection. The flesh-soul return technique and the reflection could save two people at the same time. That was fine. What was the use of the white bone escape technique and the reflection? Would it consume twice the lifespan and cause them to die on the spot in the blink of an eye? However, now is not the time to think about the Tao technique system. Jiang Wang continued to use the soul flame flower to burn the netherworld candle. He seemed to have made up his mind to burn it all at once. At this moment, sigh. It was as if a sigh came from the depths of his heart. That voice said, "I mean no harm." The netherworld candle did not move, but the soul flame flower suddenly extinguished. There was indeed something wrong with this netherworld candle. He had indeed been affected previously. Although he had long guessed it, when his guess was confirmed, Jiang Wang could not help but be shocked. Anyone who knew that their consciousness was affected by another person would not be able to remain calm. "Who are you?" Jiang Wang condensed the power of his soul and asked. "I am you," the voice said. "So how you construct the flame flower, I can dispel it. You're me?" Of course, Jiang Wang did not believe it. If it were not for the fact that this voice could affect the soul flame flower, he would have burned the netherworld candle without hesitation. "I don't know if you have noticed it yourself, but I have to tell you something." The voice said, "Using the secret technique of the white bone path will be tainted by the white bone god." Using the secret technique of the white bone path will be tainted by the white bone god. Jiang Wang ruminated over these words and felt a chill in his heart. The true power of a netherworld god is unimaginable to you. Every time you use the secret technique of the white bone path, this taint will become deeper. In the end, no one can escape his control. This is how he rules the white bone divine kingdom. The voice continued, "And I am a part of your soul. The tainted part lives in the netherworld candle. You are a part of my soul." Jiang Wang felt as if he was listening to a fantasy story. "The first time I was born was when you performed the soul return technique on the white lotus. Or I should call her Miaoyu. That's not important." Jiang Wang said, "You said, born?" "No, she is very important. It's just that you still refuse to admit it. As I said, I am you. You can even deceive yourself, but you can't deceive the other you." A soul flame flower appeared in the heavenly palace. Jiang Wang's attitude was very tough. "Don't talk about such boring things. If you can't convince me in the shortest time possible, why don't you try and see who has a deeper control of this soul?" Okay, you don't have to be angry. We don't have to consume ourselves. As I said, I have no ill intentions towards you. The truth is indeed so, isn't it? Think about it. I have never harmed you. On the contrary, I have always tried to get you out of danger." Jiang Wang said, "In my opinion, affecting my thinking is the greatest evil. If you are very resistant to this, I apologize. At first, I just didn't want to scare you, but I also didn't want you to be in danger. After all, we are one. If you die, I can't live either." "Let's talk about your birth," Jiang Wang said. "The netherworld candle is the treasure of the white bone path, and I am the part of your soul tainted by the white bone god. I can't explain my birth. It happened by chance. When I was born, I was also very ignorant, but the netherworld candle absorbed me. I gained space in the netherworld candle and was spared from fighting for dominance of the soul with you." At least, Jiang Wang had to believe this voice when it said that it could fight for dominance of the soul. The extinguished divine spirit flame flower was proof. "If you hate the term another you, I'm the part of your soul that has been tainted by the white bone god. You can call me Jiang Yan." The voice said, "You can call me Jiang Yan." Jiang Wang said, "Yan is an evil spirit, being tainted by the white bone god. Could it still be a dream?" The voice called Jiang Yan said. These words were honest. "You seem to know a lot of things that I don't. If you were me, this wouldn't make sense," Jiang Wang said. "I was born because the white bone god was tainted with a part of your soul. So apart from some of your matters, I also know many things about the white bone path. It was only because of the existence of the dark candle that I was not controlled by the white bone god. Think about it carefully. What I know and what you don't know isn't at all related to the white bone path. Whether it was the warning before the white bone god descended in Maplewood City or the neglect of the Bella Plague in Redtail County, it was indeed related to the white bone path. That alone doesn't seem to be enough to convince me, Jiang Wang said lightly. Then let me put it another way. Originally, I just wanted to quietly hide in the Netherworld candle. Every move I made was to save you. And this time, if you hadn't lit the Netherworld candle, I wouldn't have appeared at all. The Netherworld candle is the white bone path's treasure, allowing me to live in it. Once it's gone, I must return to your soul and become one with you, becoming a new me. Why don't you think about it? Are you willing to accept that situation? You might not be able to become one with me, Jiang Wang said. Yes, perhaps it'll be a new me that combines all of our wills, or perhaps it'll just be a pure you. My will be completely erased, Jiang Yin said. Or perhaps it'll just be a pure me. Tell me what you think, Jiang Wang said. I don't believe it's as simple as just living in the Netherworld candle. Or perhaps I should think of a way to send you out of Tong Tian Palace and see if you can still influence my soul outside. There's no need to hide. I already have my own independent will. Of course, I'm not willing to hide in the Netherworld candle forever, watching your wonderful life live in your Tong Tian Palace. Jiang Yin ignored Jiang Wang's threat. It was unknown whether he was certain Jiang Wang couldn't find a way to send the Netherworld candle away, or whether he believed Jiang Wang wouldn't make such a choice. He said directly, My thoughts are very simple. I also want a body of my own. Of course, I don't think I can win against you. In fact, you're not my best choice. There are many corpses in the mass grave. Men and women, old and young, beautiful and ugly, all are fine. Of course not, Jiang Yin said. I was born with the White Bone Path's aura, so I need the body of a White Bone Path member. Forget it, I'll say it directly. I only want the body of the White Bone Path disciple. Of course, he should be called Holy Lord Whitebone now. Your request isn't low. I'm Yu Jiang Wang. Do you think you're a person who only knows how to get by? What if I don't agree? Jiang Yin said coldly. Jiang Wang, you should know yourself better. Ask yourself, when have you ever lacked the courage to die together? Since you think you're another me, you think you know me very well. Jiang Wang smiled. Then why are you still trying to threaten me? It's because I know you. That's why I want you to know. No matter the result of our struggle for the soul will be damaged in the end, and we'll never be able to reach the great Tao. In fact, this is why I avoided fighting with you from the beginning. I believe you'll give up the possibility of fighting with me for this reason. Jiang Wang fell silent. He couldn't refute these words. Or rather, he didn't need to refute. This was the truth. He had been trudging all the way to the peak. There was no reason for him to stop and advance. Jiang Yin said again, Jiang Wang, I'm you, and you're me. There's no comrade in arms more intimate and reliable than ourselves. We're friends, not enemies. After a long time, Jiang Wang said, It'll be difficult to obtain the body of the White Bone Path's Holy Lord in a short time. No matter. Jiang Yin's voice seemed to be laughing. I'm very patient, and I have confidence in you. Chapter 280. Jiang Wang couldn't move the nether candle out of the heavenly palace, nor did he have a way to completely destroy Jiang Yin. On the other hand, Jiang Yan's forceful extinguishment of the divine spirit flame flower proved that he had the ability to severely injure Jiang Wang's spirit. Therefore, for Jiang Wang, compromise was inevitable. It had to be said that Jiang Yin understood him very well. In the end, he could only reach an agreement with Jiang Yin. Jiang Yin promised that he would never try to influence Jiang Wang's decisions again, and that he wouldn't leave the nether candle easily. Of course, he might not be able to leave. Jiang Wang didn't completely believe Jiang Yan's words. Compared to that, he believed in his own thoughts more. From the current situation, Jiang Yin could influence his thoughts to a small extent, but he couldn't see what he was thinking. Otherwise, Jiang Yin would have tried to avoid this situation before he tried to light the nether candle. However, he didn't do anything. This meant that even if everything Jiang Yin said was true, they were now two separate individuals and wouldn't share their thoughts and memories. But even so, Jiang Wang planned to do all his thinking in the future in the great illusionary realm. When it came to himself, he had to be careful. The path of cultivation was indeed like walking on thin ice. Who could imagine that just using the white bone Taoist technique would cause one to be corrupted by the white bone god? In any case, Jiang Wang would never use the white bone Taoist secret technique again. Jiang Yin alone was enough to give him a headache. What if some other demons and monsters jumped out? Speaking of which, Jiang Wang agreed to Jiang Yan's conditions because the white bone Taoist was his target for revenge. The white bone Divine Lord was a target he couldn't avoid. It made no difference whether he agreed to Jiang Yan's conditions or not. At least they were in the same general direction. It would be better if he could solve his own hidden problems. However, Jiang Wang wouldn't really ignore Jiang Yan. Seizing the white bone Divine Lord's body was only a long-term plan. Once he had the chance to expel him in advance, he wouldn't be lenient. There were two paths. One was to find a way to expel the nether candle from the heavenly palace. The other was to strengthen his spirit. If he could destroy Jiang Yin without any damage, he wouldn't have to worry about his threat. He didn't have any ideas for the former, but for the latter, the red makeup mirror was a treasure that could strengthen his spirit. Although the process was very dangerous, no matter what, although Ming Zhu wasn't able to solve it, at least he understood what kind of existence was affecting his thinking. The only question left was how to deal with it. The problems in front of them would be solved sooner or later. In comparison, the unknown danger was always more terrifying. Walking out of the room, Jiang Wang gathered his confidence. It was Xiang Qian, Zhu Biqiong, Zhang Hai, and Duge Xiao. In the blink of an eye, 20 days had passed. He needed to fully grasp the situation. The five of them sat down and quietly listened to Duge Xiao give a complete introduction of the recent situation. Previously, they were busy dealing with Ming Zhu, so they only heard a few words from her. Jia City's overall situation is still improving, but for some reason, the Four Seas Business Alliance is finding it more and more difficult to allocate resources. Of course, our Qingyang town's resources are still not a problem. The number of infected people have been reduced to 76. There hasn't been an increase in the number of infected people for 3 days. It can be said that in Qingyang town, this plague has been completely controlled. Duge Xiao concluded. Her information was limited to Qingyang town and Jia City at most. It was impossible for her to grasp the situation in the entire Yang country. Jiang Wang was about to speak. Flutter, Yin he nimbly squeezed through the window. These days, he will fly down once every day at noon. Xiang Qian suddenly said. Before he received the letter, Yin he would not leave. Anan must be missing me. Jiang Wang thought. He reached out and let it fall into his palm. He said, "Thank you for your hard work during this time. The 3 transcendents will each give 20 Tao origin stones to express my sincerity." 1 Tao origin stone a day was not stingy, but it was justified. When he was not in charge, the town operated according to his will. This itself was the embodiment of these people's loyalty. Zhu Biqiong and the others would not refuse. The cloud crane turned into a letter in his palm. Jiang Wang did not look at it for the time being. He looked at Xiao Xiao and said, "Don't slack off on your cultivation during this period of time. Once your foundation is established, I will buy a meridian unlocking pill for you." Right now, he could not ask for a perfect meridian opening pill. It was a priceless item. However, buying a normal meridian opening pill was not a problem. Even if he bought it from the Four Seas Business Alliance, he had enough Tao origin stones. This was like reaching the heavens in a single step. Duge Xiao was surprised and happy. "Thank you, Master." Everyone else saw Duge Xiao's performance. No matter whether they had any opinions or not, they could not deny that this was a reward she deserved. In the Zhuang State Tao Academy's Tao merit system, Tao merit points were circulated in the Zhuang State. However, outside of the Zhuang State, Tao origin stones were the transcendence currency that could be widely recognized. The Zhuang State's Tao merit system was very good. The prices were very stable. Basically, 10 Tao merit points could be exchanged for 1 Tao origin stone. There was a more direct example. 500 Tao merit points could be exchanged for a low-level basic Dharma artifact in the Zhuang State Tao Academy, which was equivalent to 50 Tao origin stones. This price was very reasonable. Jiang Wang estimated that Su Xiuxing's dagger, which had been destroyed by the pig-bone-faced man, was worth 120 Dao origin stones. This also showed how generous Jiang Wang was when he took out 200 Dao origin stones for Xiangqian. In the Zhuang State Dao Academy, according to the quota, 100 Dao merit points could be exchanged for an ordinary meridian unlocking pill. However, this was the Dao Academy's resource support for transcendence. The real price of an ordinary meridian unlocking pill was 1,500 Dao merit points. In other words, it was 150 Dao origin stones and 1.5 Dao origin stones. A Dao origin stone was 100 Dao origin stones, and 100 Dao origin stones were equivalent to 10,000 Dao origin stones. Whether what Dugu Xiao had done was worth 150 Dao origin stones or not depended on the person's opinion. For many people, an ordinary maid could be bought and sold with ordinary gold and silver. 1 Dao origin stone could be exchanged for dozens of such maids. However, for Jiang Wang, loyalty and sincerity were much more precious than Dao origin stones. No one objected to Jiang Wang's decision. Instead, Xiangqian stared at the letter in Jiang Wang's hand for a long time and showed a rare curiosity. This is the secret Taoist technique of the Lingxiao Pavilion, right? Jiang Wang did not deny it. Instead, he asked, "Have you also been to the Yun Nation?" This dejected guy was really a person with a lot of stories. Yes. After knowing the answer, Xiangqian seemed to have lost all interest and muttered, "It's just so-so." "The Yun Nation is a very good place," Jiang Wang said casually. "Let's leave it at that for now. Everyone, go to your own things. Daoist Zhu, please stay for a while. I have something to trouble you with." Everyone left in a single file. Dugu Zhao's footsteps were light, and her heart was filled with great surprise. I also have a chance to become a transcendence. She felt that the sun had never been so bright, and the world had never been so beautiful. After everyone left, Jiang Wang took out the red makeup mirror from his storage box and handed it to Zhu Biqiu. "Daoist Zhu, take a look at this mirror. Do you find it familiar?" Now that he needed to strengthen his divine spirit, he had to put the exploration of the red makeup mirror on the agenda. This item came from Hu Xiaoming. He thought that perhaps Zhu Biqiu, who also came from the Fishing Ocean Tower, would know something about it. "I've already seen it before." Zhu Biqiu was naturally talking about the time when Jiang Wang fell into the mirror world. At that time, she had already studied it, but she didn't find anything. She didn't take the mirror and only asked, "What's its name? What's its origin?" "It's called red makeup. I obtained it after killing Hu Xiaoming." Jiang Wang was very calm. This wasn't something that couldn't be revealed. "Red makeup mirror," Zhu Biqiu murmured a few times and said, "I seem to have heard of it before, but I can't remember where." She vaguely felt a certain light, but she couldn't grasp it specifically. She frowned and pondered for a long time, but in the end, she didn't find anything. "It seems to be a treasure." Jiang Wang smiled and put away the red makeup mirror. He didn't completely hide anything from Zhu Biqiu. He didn't tell her about his preliminary exploration of the red makeup mirror. "It doesn't matter. When you remember it, you can tell me. In addition, please keep it a secret for me." Jiang Wang finally said, "After all, an ordinary man is innocent, but treasuring a jade ring becomes a crime." "That's natural." Since she couldn't remember, Zhu Biqiu didn't think about it and said crisply, "I also keep my word." Chapter 281. When everyone left, Jiang Wang impatiently opened the letter. Halfway through, he suddenly paused. It was fine when he didn't know before, but now that he knew there was a will hidden in Heaven Connection Palace, he felt very uncomfortable, especially when reading such a personal letter. After a moment of thought, his consciousness sank into Heaven Connection Palace. "Jiang Yin, I want to read the letter now. I have to think of a way to seal you temporarily." He had an idea, but he had to get Jiang Yin's agreement. Otherwise, if Jiang Yin thought he wanted to do something and overreacted, it wouldn't be good. If Jiang Yin didn't agree, he didn't have any good ideas for now, but he definitely wouldn't be happy. Unexpectedly, Jiang Yin was easy to talk to. "I can understand. When necessary, Like if you want to do something with your pretty attendant, you can seal the inside and outside as long as it doesn't harm the dark abyss candle. However, I hope you remember to tell me each time, or I'm afraid there will be a misunderstanding. He then changed to a negotiating tone. You don't know how uncomfortable it is to stay in the dark abyss candle and not be able to see anything. Jiang Wang ignored his boring joke and said, "This request is reasonable. You can understand me. I can understand you. Jiang Wang, I am you, you are me. We are both people who respect promises." Jiang Yin said meaningfully and then fell silent. "It's good that you understand yourself," Jiang Wang said. His words were also very meaningful. "If you are like me, then of course I am a person who keeps my promises. If you're not like me, then I will not keep my promises to you." People couldn't live without their promises. Jiang Wang naturally believed in keeping his promises, but also depended on who. He didn't know the roots or the depths of an existence like Jiang Yin. If he kept his promises unilaterally, he wouldn't even know how he died. If he promised Cheng Gung Sheng, he could travel tens of thousands of li to help him when the Heavenly Palace secret realm. If he promised Lien Ke, he could return the life tablet without hesitation. If he promised Zhu Biqiong, he could put down everything and immediately set out to kill Hu Xiaoming. But Jiang Yin was different. The conditions he reached with Jiang Yin were a trade after weighing the pros and cons, not a promise. They were different in nature. As for how to seal Jiang Wang's awareness of the outside world, Jiang Wang's method of thinking was based on the Sea of Flowers. The inspiration came from the divine spirit flame flower. Using spiritual energy to replace Tao energy. If he could use the spiritual energy flower sea, it would naturally have the effect of setting up a battlefield. Concealing one's awareness was even easier. Every day, Jiang Wang would attend morning and night classes without rest. Whenever he had the time, he would repeatedly practice his Taoist techniques and swordsmanship. He was already very familiar with all the Taoist techniques that he had mastered. With the success of the divine spirit flame flower, it was foreseeable that a sea of divine spirit flowers would appear in Tongtian Palace. He had only made a small attempt, and he had already succeeded. At this moment, inside the tall and majestic Tongtian Palace, the star-twining spirit snake was moving back and forth between the 9 great star river spirals. The nether candle stood alone in a corner, submerged in a magnificent sea of divine soul flowers. If this scene could be shown, it would definitely be one of the rare sceneries in the world. After temporarily blocking Jiang Wang's awareness, Jiang Wang felt that his mind was much lighter than before. He had the joy of returning to nature. When he opened the letter, he even wanted to sing a song to liven things up, but he gave up because it was too unpleasant to listen to. Judging from Ainan's letter, her handwriting had become much better. It was obvious that she had not neglected her studies in Lingxiao Pavilion. She talked about her favorite food for a while, acted coquettishly, and talked about how tiring it was to practice martial arts. Finally, she said in a roundabout way, "Chi-Chi is so far away. It might be October before your letter comes back." Of course, it would not take that much time for Yunhe to travel between the two places. It was not difficult to guess the little girl's thoughts. October 13th, was her birthday. She just wanted Jiang Wang to spend it with her. But Jiang Wang could only sigh inwardly. A round trip to Yin Nation would take at least a month and a half. Cheng Gungsheng's situation was not yet settled. Yang Nation was in chaos, so he could not leave at this time. He could only pretend that he did not understand. He talked about the delicacies in Yang Nation's qi and promised to bring her here to eat in the future. This was the only way. Yi Qingyu's letter only mentioned that she had recently participated in some trials and had improved her strength. The content was still mainly about Jiang Ainan, talking about the little girl's recent situation. Jiang Wang entrusted his sister to her, so she did her best. The letter mentioned, Earth-grade pills have been collected for a long time. It is really rare. We have an A-grade meridian unlocking pill. Is it possible to use it to open Ainan's meridians? Jiang Ainan had been practicing martial arts for a while. She had also received excellent guidance in Lingxiao Pavilion, so her foundation was gradually solidified. The matter of opening meridians was also put on the agenda. When Jiang Wang saw this, he immediately entered the great illusionary land and wrote to Chung Gung Sheng to ask about the price of an Earth-grade pill and an A-grade meridian unlocking pill. Limited by his knowledge, he actually knew nothing about the grades of meridian unlocking pills. It was from Zhao Ruqing that he learned that there were ordinary and extraordinary meridian unlocking pills. He wanted to ask for a perfect meridian unlocking pill for Jiang Anan so that she would suffer less. But Zhao Ruqing did not say how perfect a perfect meridian unlocking pill was at that time. He probably felt that it was too far away. Therefore, he did not know. Chung Gung Sheng's letter was slightly sloppy. From the words that were still full of fighting spirit, he should have just fought with someone in the great illusionary land. Otherwise, he would not have replied so quickly. This fatty had been working very hard recently. It should be related to Qi's big move. Meridian unlocking pills are divided into 3 grades: Heaven, Earth, and Human. Heaven-grade pills are only legends. Earth-grade pills are hard to come by. Human-grade pills are divided into 4 grades. D-grade pills are ordinary meridian unlocking pills. C-grade pills are slightly stronger, B-grade pills are good, and A-grade pills are excellent. The price fluctuates slightly, but in general, the price of an A-grade meridian unlocking pill should not be lower than 1 million primeval stones. Attached to the letter was the price of meridian unlocking pills that Jubao merchants recently announced. D-grade meridian unlocking pill, 1.5 primeval stones. C-grade meridian unlocking pill, 10,000 primeval stones. B-grade meridian unlocking pill, 30,000 primeval stones. A-grade meridian unlocking pill, 1 million primeval stones. It could be seen that as the grade of the meridian unlocking pill increased, its price also soared. As for the price of an Earth-grade pill, Chung Gung Sheng did not mention at all. Once this kind of thing appeared, there would be many people fighting over it. The price was sometimes meaningless. Good heavens, this was the first time Jiang Wang saw 10,000 primeval stones calculated by 100. Back then, he had risked his life to kill Prince Qi Jiangwuyo. Other than the secret Dao technique, he had only earned 10,000 primeval stones. In other words, such a good thing had to happen 10 times before he could obtain the Dao primeval stones worth of an A-grade meridian unlocking pill. After this period of hard work, and even killing and robbing the snake-skin man, Jiang Wang had thought that he was already quite rich. But now it seemed that Yi Qingyu was willing to use a meridian unlocking pill worth 1 million primeval stones to open Jiang Anan's meridians. He even wanted to buy an Earth-grade pill, but he did not manage to buy one. What else could Jiang Wang say? He immediately replied, wishing Yi Qingyu bravely and diligently for a long journey ahead. Then he returned to Jiang Anan. When the conditions are right, I'll call you Anan for meridian unlocking. Then he expressed his gratitude, saying some words of gratitude that came from the bottom of his heart but did not have much meaning. Finally, he wrote, I will pay you back soon. He thought for a while, then crossed out soon and changed it to as soon as possible. After thinking for a while, he changed it to in the future. P.S. There will be more updates at midnight. Ashun pays the debt. Soon. Chapter 282. Many people probably didn't remember who Xuanzi was. Even Jiang Wang might not have an impression of this name if he suddenly heard it. Most of the ordinary people in this world had such a sense of existence. When Hu Laojin was still alive, perhaps some people still remembered Hu Xuanzi, this simple and honest young man. But after Hu Laojin died, he became even more silent. As the saying goes, when a man achieves the Tao, even his chickens and dogs ascend to heaven. Hu Laojin, the former village constable, had no children, so he got Hu Xuanzi, who was somewhat related to him, into the town hall to take care of him. In fact, during this period of time, Hu Xuanzi also did a lot of things. Maintaining order, transporting supplies, publicizing the strategy to prevent and control the plague. In short, he did everything he could do. He also especially consulted the guarding warriors of the mine, now incorporated into Qingyang Town Hall, about martial arts, and practiced hard every day. Although Jiang Wang gave Duga Xiao power, she needed to work hard to win it. Hu Xuanzi was the most resolute executor of any command of Duga Xiao. At first, it was under his leadership that other people slowly began to recognize Duga Xiao's command. But that was all. No matter how much he wanted to do, his strength was limited. Naturally, he was the first to notice the change in Duga Xiao's mood. Intentionally or unintentionally, he swayed in front of Duga Xiao several times before he finally plucked up the courage to say, "Xiao Xiao, are you happy today?" Duga Xiao raised her head and smiled at him. "Yes, Brother Xuanzi." That was all. She didn't explain why she was happy, nor did she want to share her happiness with him. Of course, she knew Xuanzi's feelings, but she had already said what needed to be said. In a world where extraordinary power ran rampant, ordinary people had no future. She used to think that she also had no future. So she tried her best to keep up with Jiang Wang's footsteps and tried her best to show her value. It was all because of the lack of sense of security, all because of the anxiety of precarious life. She was afraid that she would be abandoned without hesitation if she was even a little bit slower. She would fall back into that gray world again. But now, with Jiang Wang's promise, she even began to look forward to the future excessively. In that colorful world, Hu Xuanzi naturally didn't exist. She was willing to act a little closer to Hu Xuanzi because she was grateful for his kind intentions. Using such an attitude to make others respect Hu Xuanzi more was an equal return in her eyes. There was neither too much nor too little. Seeing that Dugu Xiao didn't have any intention to say more, Hu Xuanzi laughed foolishly. "Then you can continue with your work." To him, this smile was enough. In fact, Dugu Xiao rarely smiled. She wore a cold face most of the time, which made her look more mature. The others might not know, or they might not care, but he knew that he cared. Walking out of the town hall and across the courtyard, he walked past Xiang Qian, who was sunbathing on a lounge chair. The hard work he had put in previously was like the final radiance of a dying man. After the plague was brought under control, he quickly reverted to his old ways. If he could sit, he would never stand. If he could lie down, he would never sit. "It's useless," Fang Qian suddenly said as Hu Xuanzi walked past. Hu Xuanzi did not dare to be negligent. He stopped and turned around, respectfully asking, "Master Xiang, do you want to talk to me?" Fang Qian didn't even lift his eyelids, but clearly there was no one else there. "Give up. You don't belong to the same world. You can't reach her even if you stand on your tiptoes." It was like this in the past, and it will be even more so in the future. Hu Xuanzi probably understood, but he didn't say anything. The road ahead is long. Fang Qian sighed. "Xuanzi, why don't you not go? I don't know if Lu Man is man or not, or if she's far away." "Master Xiang," Xuanzi said seriously, "I'm just looking. It's already very good." The sunlight was really good, making people feel that the world was bright and beautiful. "Since you made up your mind, then work hard. I'm talking about real hard work, not running around like a headless fly like you are now." Fang Qian lay on his back and opened his eyes to look at the cloudless sky. In a daze, he had an illusion that the whole sky was about to collapse. When you've really worked hard, you'll understand that working hard is useless. "Okay, Master Xiang." Hu Xuanzi seemed to understand, but in fact, he left in confusion. Everyone saw the world differently. Fang Qian could sunbathe leisurely, but Hu Xuanzi only felt that it was really hot. Pingyang County was the head of the 3 counties in Yang Country, and the country's capital was naturally in this county. The capital of Yang Country was called Zhaoheng. The original name was Tianxiong. It was only changed to Zhaoheng after it bowed to Qi. That was something that happened many years ago. At this moment, in the palace of Zhaoheng City, an ordinary-looking young man was sitting in a side hall and waiting. Not only did he look ordinary, but his temperament was also very ordinary. Even though he was wearing luxurious clothes, he looked a little out of place. In short, he didn't look noble. If Jiang Wang was here, he would recognize this person. It was the self-proclaimed #1 assassin in the eastern region, Ah Su, whom he met at World Tower in Songfeng City. To be able to hang the signboard of an assassin organization in a big city and make it more lively than ordinary restaurants, World Tower was naturally not simple. At least, they had some connections in the local government. But Jiang Wang probably didn't expect that Ah Su was not simple to the extent that he could enter and leave the palace as he pleased. He was actually the fifth and youngest son of the current king of Yang country. His surname was Yang, and his name was Xuanzi. As the saying goes, the royal family loves the eldest son. The people love the youngest son. It wasn't clear whether it was true or not, but Yang Xuanzi was extremely disliked. The Yang country was only so big. When he was born, most of the things that should be shared and occupied were taken by his brothers. He didn't even get any leftovers, so he simply gave up on the idea of going to the palace. Being an idle prince was one thing, but he also went to establish an assassin organization and called himself the #1 assassin in the eastern region. He spent money to hire a bunch of idlers to visit the organization all day long and pretended that business was good. In fact, he was losing money all the time. This little prince didn't do things well, didn't look good, and didn't have a good family background. His mother was just a lowly palace maid. His birth was the result of a drunken whim of His Majesty. That pitiful palace maid, after giving birth to Yang Xuanzi, died for no apparent reason. There was still no explanation. Some said it was because the Empress Dowager, who was still alive at that time, didn't like it. Some said it was because of the Empress. It was unclear. In short, it was a mess. He didn't hesitate to open the letter left by Jiang Wang. After all, World Tower wasn't a place that cared about reputation. Originally, he just thought it was something interesting. After reading it, he immediately came to Zhaoheng City. No matter how many people scolded him for being insensible, he could understand how terrible the plague that ravaged the Yang country was. If the White Bone Path had any further movements, the Yang country would be on high alert. He didn't like Zhaoheng City. He didn't like it at all. Whether it was the streets or the air here, there was a kind of coldness that made him feel suffocated. So he would rather hide in Songfeng City and run his unsuccessful assassin business. But no matter what, his home was still here. He was born here and grew up here. But he didn't expect that when he finally went back to the palace, he would drink a cup of tea for several hours. He didn't even get to see his father. His Majesty was really busy. Yang Xuanzi thought to himself in boredom. The crown prince could see the king at any time. He was also a son, but if he wanted to see the king, he had to report it repeatedly. He wanted to leave, but when he thought of the letter, "How long do I have to wait?" he couldn't help but tap his cup. The young eunuch serving him said submissively, this servant really doesn't know." "Then what do you know?" "This servant is guilty. This servant deserves to die." The young eunuch was flustered and only knew how to kneel and beg for mercy. "That's all you have to say." Yang Xuanzi was indeed a bit angry, but he held it in. "I won't make things difficult for you. Go ask Eunuch Lu. How long will my father be busy? I have something important to talk to him about." The young eunuch hurriedly knelt on the ground. "This servant will go ask him right away." He left and didn't return. Tea. He hadn't left yet, but the tea had already turned cold. He had the royal bloodline. Was he some poor relative trying to curry favor with nobles? Even though Yang Xuanzi had long been used to being ignored, it was still unbearable to be ignored to this extent and so thoroughly. He didn't fight or snatch, but that didn't mean he didn't have to give up the most basic respect. He simply got up and left the side hall, ignoring the prohibition and the palace maid's attempts to stop him. His sleeves fluttered as he walked straight to the Yangxin Palace Hall, where the king of Yang country dealt with state affairs. "Let's see who dares to stop me," he sneered inwardly. As soon as he arrived at the Yangxin Palace Hall, a kind-looking, beardless old man appeared silently in front of him. "Your Highness, where have you come from?" This person was the eunuch Lu Huai, who was the king's most trusted aide and often served him. Even the crown prince of Yang country didn't dare to slight him. Seeing that it was him, Yang Xuanzi could only restrain his anger. "I'm here to see my father." Then he added, feeling even more humiliated, "I have something important to talk to him about." "I see." Lu Huai seemed to have just found out about this. He smiled politely. Your Highness, you've worked hard. Why would I complain about working hard for the sake of the country? Yang Xuanzi said, then reminded him, Is my father in the hall right now? Ah, His Majesty is here. Then I'll have to trouble you to inform him, Yang Xuanzi said. This is a difficult time for the country, and His Majesty is busy every day. When he's done with this, I'll definitely pass on a message for your Highness. Lu Huai said respectfully, The sun is scorching hot. Your Highness, why don't you have another cup of tea? Tea. Another cup of tea. Another wait. His face was full of respect, but his heart was full of contempt. Smack! Yang Xuanzi finally couldn't hold back anymore. He tore off the jade ornament on his waist and smashed it in front of this person. He shouted sternly, Lu Huai, are you trying to stop the royal father and son from meeting and isolate the Yang family? P.S. Although Alliance Head Chin said that the reward wasn't to urge you to update, it was because he liked it. But the author still has to show some appreciation. If he can't handle the third chapter, he has to squeeze out the first one. Make a heart. Chapter 283. Yang Xuanzi, the youngest son of the king of the Yang Kingdom, threw away his usual forbearance and flew into a rage in the palace, smashing his jade pendant. No one dared to bear the crime of obstructing the king's relationship. It was so quiet outside the Yangxin Palace that even breathing could not be heard. It was as if the wind had stopped. Lu Huai, the eunuch, immediately bowed his head and admitted his mistake. How would I dare? However, his posture was very proper and his etiquette was complete. His feet did not move at all. He admitted his mistake, apologized, and bowed his head, but the king did not move. He looked at the guards, maids, and eunuchs around him, and then at the silent Yangxin Palace. Yang Xuanzi realized that his heart, which had already turned cold, could actually cool down even more with his cultivation. How could his father not hear him when he made such a ruckus? He just did not want to hear it, or was too lazy to care. After enduring for so many years, this was the first time he had lost his temper. Yang Xuanzi wanted to do something, but he suddenly became disheartened. What was the point? Fine. He sighed and took out a letter from his sleeve. Important matters of the country cannot be delayed. Just pass this letter to my father, and I will not be an eyesore to him. I will definitely deliver it. Lu Huai bowed and respectfully received the letter with both hands, not forgetting the etiquette of a subject. He watched Yang Xuanzi's back as he strode away. Then, he straightened his back bit by bit. Without even looking at it, he rubbed his hands, and the letter turned into powder. His lips curled into a cold smile. Now that the Eastern Palace had been stabilized, Lu Huai naturally knew who was the master of the country. It was too late for the fifth prince to think of getting down to business and starting the stove. Moreover, the king did not care about this so-called son at all. The crown prince was definitely the future master of the Yang Kingdom. He had served the king for many years, so how could he not know? Of course, he was only loyal to the king, but he also had to maintain the necessary respect for the next king. Delivering the letter today was just a matter of convenience, but in the eyes of those with ulterior motives, it would be seen as a lack of determination and inevitable punishment in the future. How could he take the risk for a mere Yang Xuanzi? Outside the Yangxin Palace Hall, there were guards, palace maids, and eunuchs, but all of them were looking down at their boots. No one dared to look in their direction. Lu Huai bent his back. If he was unfortunate enough to see someone who was not worthy of looking at him, his lifespan might be shortened. Turning around, he walked back into the Yangxin Palace Hall without making a single sound. Beside the monarch, countless people wanted to squeeze in, so there was no time to waste. The king of the Yang Kingdom, Yang Jinda, sat on a white jade futon with his eyes closed. There was a faint golden light above his head, but he was not busy with any political affairs. Lu Huai carefully stood in a corner of the hall. It was a position where the monarch would be able to find him immediately if he wanted to find him. It was also a position where he wouldn't always block the monarch's line of sight and annoy him. After a long time, the king of the Yang Kingdom, Yang Jinda, didn't open his eyes. What is Xuanzi up to now? Lu Huai respectfully replied. He said that he has an official matter to discuss with your majesty. In the vast hall, there were no more words. The plague in Jia City was finally under control. With the support of the Yang court and the assistance of the Four Seas Business Alliance, the Shi family, who had ruled this place for hundreds of years, mobilized all their forces. In any case, before the end of the 7th month, the plague was stopped from spreading. In the end, the plague was terrifying, but in the world of transcendence, it wasn't an unsolvable problem. It wasn't even within the range of the most terrifying disasters. Take the great battle between Qin and Chu in the Valley Plains last year as an example. Both sides had invested close to 100,000 transcendents, and the mountains collapsed and the earth cracked. When the two powerful countries fought, the entire Valley Plains had caved in for hundreds of miles, and not a single blade of grass grew. The fertile land of the past had become scorched earth overnight. This plain used to support many people, but now, not even grass could grow. What kind of natural disaster could be compared to this kind of tragedy? As for the destruction of Fenglin City in the Zhuang Kingdom and the loss of hundreds of thousands of corpses, it was needless to say, the plague in the Yang Kingdom had spread until now, but the number of deaths had yet to exceed 100,000. Of course, things weren't calculated in this way. The tragedy was never easy to compare. However, man-made disasters were always better than natural disasters. When humans killed people, they killed more than any natural disaster or any foreign species. They killed more happily. Let's not talk about these things for now. Observant people had probably noticed that in this period of time, there were fewer and fewer direct descendants of the Shi family in Jia City. Many of the Shi family's properties had been sold or given away. The Shi family had already completely withdrawn from Jia City, from the land they had managed for hundreds of years. No one knew where they were going, but many people were certain that they were going to the East King Valley. After all, the current head of the Shi family, Shi Zichu, was a disciple of the East King Valley. The East King Valley wasn't much different from a normal country, so naturally, it could accommodate the Shi family. However, leaving one's home was cheap. No matter where they moved to, it would take more than 1 or 2 generations for the Shi family to return to its former glory. On this day, Jiang Wang was cultivating when suddenly a martial artist from the town hall came to report, "Lord Jiang, Shi Zichu is outside the town, and he said they'd want to fight with you." A person's name was like a tree's shadow. The Shi family had managed Jia City for hundreds of years. Even though they had lost the support of the people due to the plague, the prestige they had accumulated over the years was still there. Especially since Shi Zichu was the current head of the Shi family. He had undeniably inherited this prestige. This was also the reason why Jiang Wang thought that if he wanted to stop the plague in Jia City, he needed Shi Zichu's cooperation. Everyone in Jia City was afraid of the Shi family's prestige. This martial artist from the town hall was no exception. Jiang Wang opened his eyes without any surprise. He directly took out his long sword, pushed open the door, and walked towards the town's north gate. Coming from the direction of Jia City, it was naturally the north gate. On the way, he heard an angry shout that shook the entire town. "Jiang Wang!" This time, Xiang Qian, Zhu Biqiang, Zhang Hai, and Du Xiao were all alarmed. Even the guards of the Four Seas Merchant Alliance's warehouse and the medical cultivators that Cheng Gung Sheng sent to treat the people all paid attention. Not to mention the town hall's constables, martial artists, and even the townspeople. If it wasn't for the fact that it was a special period where people were forbidden from entering and leaving, the townspeople would have already crowded the north gate. Even so, they all pricked up their ears in their homes, waiting for what would happen next. But what made them disappointed was that the sound that shook the entire town never sounded again, because Jiang Wang had already arrived. That day in Jia City, there should have been this battle. Thinking of the townspeople, he put away his sword and left. Now that it had come to this, of course he wouldn't avoid it. Jiang Wang walked to the north gate of Qingyang town in large strides. The first thing he saw was Shi Zichu. He stood alone. His usual confident and unrestrained appearance was all gone. His face that was much thinner than before had a cold expression. His forehead was wrapped in a mourning band, and he was wearing mourning clothes. Seeing Jiang Wang appear, he only said, "Everything has been decided. Let's stick to our previous agreement." He stuck the carp-patterned red flag into the ground several inches deep. The flag fluttered in the wind. "Jiang Wang, I'll kill you." The hatred of killing his father was irreconcilable. Xiang Qian was eager to try. Du Guxiao even quietly pulled Zhu Biqiao. But Jiang Wang waved his hand behind him, indicating that they shouldn't act rashly. With one hand on his waist, he stood outside the town gate. Guarding the gate with one sword, he only said, "Come forward." Chapter 284. The crimson flag fluttered and a spot of blood appeared. Then, waves of blood surged like a raging tide. The murderous aura swept like the wind, like a sharp knife cutting off one's head. The loyalty, bravery, fierceness, and might of the Shi family for hundreds of years were all in it. But perhaps it could only be seen in this flag. The spectators in Qingyang town involuntarily retreated. Only Jiang Wang stood silently like a reef. The sea of blood surged and roared. Shi Zichu stepped on the waves and pointed forward with his right hand. A silver needle pierced through the wind. Halfway there, it turned into thousands of silver lights and converged into a small silver dragon that pounced on Jiang Wang. Suddenly, flowers bloomed without a sound. The red flowers were brighter than fire. The green flowers were like jade. The colorful flowers competed with each other in beauty. In the roaring sea of blood, a sea of flowers bloomed silently. A silence was equivalent to 1,000 roars. The small silver dragon had just pounced out and stirred up the petals. And then, bang, 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 bang. There were consecutive explosions. The small silver dragon struggled and screamed like a living creature. Finally, under the successive explosions of the flame flowers, it turned into a silver needle and fell to the ground. Today, the sea of flowers was now a sea of flame flowers. It was a mixture of illusion and reality, and had power in itself. It was completely different from before. They had not seen each other for a while, but Shi Zichu was fully prepared and gave it his all. But Jiang Wang was stronger than when he killed Shi Munin. This was the biggest reason why Jiang Wang did not kill Shi Zichu on the spot. He was confident that no matter how fast Shi Zichu went, he would be faster. The East King Valley was not undeserving of its reputation, and Shi Zichu was not mediocre. The small silver dragon's silver needle fell and suddenly lit up again. It turned into a silver ray of light and swam around, passing through the flowers. Shi Zichu had mastered the famous East King 12 needles, the pattern-breaking needle, the formation-breaking needle, and the life-suspending needle. The pattern-breaking needle targeted formation patterns and formation discs, while the formation-breaking needle targeted battle formations and formations. This silver flood dragon was the needle to break the formation. The sea of flame flowers was an area of effect, Dao technique, not a formation, but it had something in common. The formation-breaking needle pierced through the flowers and temporarily fixed the position of the sea of flame flowers, allowing Shi Zichu to grasp the direction. At the same time, he formed hand seals and held a jade pearl in his mouth. The hallucinogenic effect of the sea of flowers was due to the slight influence of poison. Shi Zichu, who was from the East King Valley, was naturally unafraid. He easily dispelled the hallucinatory effects of the poison. In the sea of flame flowers after the sublimation, the flame flowers were alternating between illusion and reality. It was not something that could be completely eliminated just by dispelling the hallucination effect. However, it was not enough to affect Shi Zichu's actions. Without the confusion of his position and the disturbance of the illusory flower, he flew forward. With a flick of his finger, a silver light flashed, and a needle hung in the air. The suspending needle was the most dangerous of the 12 needles of the Eastern King. The needle had just entered Jiang Wang's throat. Jiang Wang's entire body shattered in front of Shi Zichu. Shi Zichu was shocked. This scene reminded him of Hu Xiaoming. Back then, Hu Xiaoming had used an illusion to keep him in Jia City, preventing him from participating in the fight for the heavenly clear cloud sheep. Were they? His mind raced, but it was already too late. Behind him, there was an exquisite little mirror hidden in a flame flower that was about to bloom. Jiang Wang leapt out of the mirror. The crown of thorns on his head flashed and disappeared. Overlaying, he activated Binding Tiger. Shi Zichu's figure froze in midair. Jiang Wang had already moved forward from behind. Sticking close to his back, his sword pierced through his heart. The sea of blood receded, and the flame flowers withered. This scene was clearly reflected in the spectator's eyes. The multicolored light finally dissipated like smoke. At the last moment of his life, Shi Zichu did not turn his head. He stared straight at Qingyang town, momentarily dazed. The people who were watching the battle were all unfamiliar to him. He was also unfamiliar with this town that was especially deserted because of the plague. Ever since the Zhenggenjia mine was designated, this town had always been the territory of Hu Xiaoming and his son. No matter how unwilling the Shi family was, they could only reluctantly agree. However, in Shi Zichu's heart, this town had always been the Shi family's town. It had never changed owners. Those who passed by were just passers-by. Every time he passed by this place without entering, what was he thinking about? Du Guxiao looked at the Shi family's young master from afar. Strangely, he did not see any pain in his eyes. Instead, he saw a trace of longing that could not be erased. The sword returned to its scabbard. The corpse fell to the ground. Jiang Wang reached out and rolled up the carp-patterned red flag. Keeping it in his storage box, he walked into the town. He only casually ordered, "Bury him properly." Other than the carp-patterned red flag, Shi Zichu came alone. The battle with Shi Zichu was actually not suspenseful. Jiang Wang was just testing out the use of the red mirror in battle. Otherwise, the battle would have ended much faster. Compared to Shi Munin, Shi Zichu was much weaker. There was no reason for him to lose. Jiang Wang was not the only one who understood this logic. Shi Zichu understood it too. But he still came, and he came alone, without a single expert from the Shi family. In fact, he came this time to seek death. The hatred of his father's murder was irreconcilable. He fought with all his might, only for one thing. If he won, the hatred would be resolved. If he lost, his soul would perish. But no matter the outcome, there was no way out. Regarding the plague that ravaged the whole country, both Yang Court and the people of Yang Country needed an explanation. Shi Munin alone was not enough. The Shi family's future had to be cut off, their family business ruined, and their genius dead. Only then would they barely qualify. If Shi Zichu did not die, the Shi family would not be able to leave Yang Country. He sacrificed his own life to fight against the plague, to seek a way out for the Shi family, to atone for Shi Munin's mistakes. But before Yang Court put him on trial, he put himself on trial first. Once upon a time, beautiful women, fresh flowers, and strong wine. He enjoyed the glory of his family, but was shackled by his family for life. He made a choice between being a medical cultivator and his family. He made a choice between hatred and his family. Between himself and his family, he made the same choice. This was either sorrow or honor, but it was not important. Choosing to die on the road of revenge was probably the only dignity he could preserve for himself. To Jiang Wang, he gave Shi Zichu enough time to arrange a way out for his family in exchange for Shi Zichu's full effort in fighting against the plague in Jia City. There was no loss or debt, and the two had nothing to do with each other. He respected Shi Zichu's sacrifice for his family. But that was all. When it came to killing, he would not be soft-hearted. He had already thrown Shi Zichu to the back of his mind. Just like every previous battle, he silently reviewed the entire process. He found the mistakes he had made to ensure that he would not make them again. He looked for ways to improve so that the next battle would be easier. It was not practical to use the sea of flame flowers as a cover to create illusions that could pass off as real. The most important thing was the safety of hiding in the world of the red makeup mirror. Because he had to be in the world of the red makeup mirror to create illusions, the safety of the mirror itself was not guaranteed. He had enough confidence to defeat Shi Zichu, which was why he dared to hide in the mirror world and hide the red makeup mirror in the sea of flame flowers. If it had been someone stronger who could have discovered the red makeup mirror and destroyed it, he would have been in deep trouble. Only when he could use the red makeup mirror without entering the mirror world would he be able to increase his combat strength. The red makeup mirror was still mainly used as a support tool. Jiang Wang had just returned to his room and was about to continue his unfinished cultivation when he was interrupted again. It was Xiao Xiao who ran over, panting. "Master, I don't know why, but the people from the Four Seas Business Alliance suddenly ran away. They didn't bring anything with them, as if they were fleeing for their lives." Chapter 285. City's city lord had been sitting in his study for an hour. There was a sandalwood brocade box on his desk, emitting a faint fragrance. Inside the brocade box was the gift from Rizhao County Chief. City's city lord sighed and opened the brocade box again. He looked at the gift, a head that had been preserved with a Dao technique. It was lifelike. It was Qin Yinmin. With Jiang Wang's help, he had indeed escaped from City, but he had not been able to leave Rizhao County. He had been stopped by the soldiers who had sealed off the area. Qin Yinmin, who had been anxious to escape, had clamored to complain to Rizhao County Chief. He had indeed relied on old Mr. Qin's reputation to meet Rizhao County Chief. In the end, this was the result. What made City's city lord sigh was, of course, not the head itself, but the price he had to pay for this head. After staying in Rizhao County for so long, he understood that old fellow Rizhao County Chief very well. The reason why he had preserved the head and sent it over was to tell him, "I have solved your problem. You can pay the bill yourself." Just like how City had performed so badly against the plague, he had only received a few words of reprimand. The real price he had to pay was in the secret, in the gifts he had sent to the county chief. Now, there was another head. City's city lord could not help but feel pain. This was not a problem that could be solved with a few hundred Dao Yuan stones. For a moment, he would rather that Qin Yinmin had gone to complain to the emperor. But in the end, it was just a thought. You say, this old fellow is doing his best. First, he wanted to send a message. Then he wanted to complain to the emperor. It's not beneficial to the country. It's not helpful at all. Why is he doing this? City's city lord looked at Qin Yinmin's head and asked with a frown. The new guard commander said respectfully, "It's hard to guess the evil intentions of the unruly people. A mortal must have something to ask for in this world. Not for wealth, but for fame." City's city lord sneered. "He's just like his old man, asking for a virtuous name. I'll let him be innocent in life and nameless in death." He closed the brocade box and said angrily, "Qin Yinmin, this thief looks kind on the surface, but he's vicious on the inside. His heart is evil, unforgivable. He secretly colluded with the evil people and ruined the city lord's plan, causing the plague." Old Mr. Qin was angered to death by him. The more he spoke, the angrier he got. It was as if this was already the truth. He slapped the table and said, "Send this thief's head to every corner of the city, to serve as a warning to others. This bastard is so hateful." The new commander of the bodyguards showed that he was stronger than his predecessor. He was so angry that his teeth itched. People were even worried that he would eat Qin Yinmin's head out of anger. Qin Yinmin's head began to spread throughout the city in the morning along with the announcement of his crimes. At such a crucial time to fight against the plague, it had to be said that City's city lord was indeed a genius to be able to transfer manpower to do such a thing. Buddhists believed in karma. As the saying goes, what goes around comes around. He did not know if it was retribution or not. At the very least, City's city lord himself felt that way for a moment. Because he had started spreading rumors about Qin Yinmin in the morning, he received a piece of news that made him tremble in fear in the afternoon. The people who were responsible for burying Li Yong and the two transcendent constables were all infected with the plague. Among them, there was a transcendent cultivator. Moreover, this transcendent cultivator had died in a short 6 hours after the outbreak. It was worse than the reaction of ordinary people after being infected by the plague. If it was said that the deaths of Li Yong and the other two could have been caused by someone using sorcery, or they could have been infected by the plague after death. Then, the latest transcendent cultivator who died of the disease was undoubtedly proof that the plague that was wreaking havoc in Yang country had completed its advancement and was beginning to attack transcendent cultivators. In other words, the power that could deal with the plague head-on was no longer safe. This meant that this plague might be out of control. City Lord had immediately reported the deaths of Liang and the other two to Yang Ting. However, he did not really believe it himself. After all, it was difficult to prove it alone. And now, perhaps it was an illusion, but City Lord actually felt that he was a little hot. He could not help but reach out to touch his forehead. However, his hand was cold and covered in cold sweat. In Xingyang town, Dugu Xiao prepared a coffin at the last minute and hurriedly buried Shizichu. However, on the way back, he discovered that the Four Seas Business Alliance's warehouse was being evacuated with bags of various sizes. He hurriedly rushed over to report this to Jiang Wang. At such a crucial moment in the battle against the plague, Jiang Wang naturally could not allow them to leave. When he arrived at the scene, Fang Chong was blocking the Four Seas Business Alliance's guards, not allowing them to leave. If not for the Four Seas Business Alliance's reputation, he would have already attacked. The moment he saw Jiang Wang approaching, the bald guard commander immediately shouted, "Sir, young master, Lord Jiang, please let us go. We did not touch any of the supplies in the warehouse. We brought our own things." Seeing that this group of people did not want to cause trouble, Jiang Wang did not attack immediately. He asked directly, "Why are you suddenly leaving? Isn't it a pleasant cooperation?" The bald guard commander of the Four Seas Business Alliance hesitated for a moment, then said, "We are homesick and really want to go back. If you are so homesick, why did you come out in the first place? I have already discussed this with your manager Qian. The town is so short on manpower now. Do you want me to send someone else to look after the warehouse?" Jiang Wang said slowly, "If you don't tell the truth, I'm afraid you won't be able to leave." The bald man looked left and right, then gritted his teeth and said to Jiang Wang, "Lord Jiang, let me tell you something, please don't spread it. This is top secret information. I heard that the plague in Yang country has mutated. Now it not only infects ordinary people, but also supernatural cultivators. You should leave quickly. If you don't, you won't be able to leave." When he said this, Dugu Zhao's face turned pale with fright. Even Fang Chong could not help but look left and right, keeping a distance from the others. "Who did you hear this from?" Jiang Wang frowned. "Since this is confidential, why are the security measures so poor?" The bald man knew that he would not be able to leave if he did not tell the truth, and there was no chance of success if he tried to force his way out. Therefore, he leaned closer and whispered, "I have a good brother who is now working for Lord Qian. Originally, this information was not allowed to spread. Please don't betray him." Seeing that he was telling the truth, Jiang Wang's frown deepened. "Where is Manager Qian now?" "To be honest, I'm afraid Manager Qian has returned to Qi by now. He did not even want to earn a large sum of money and ran back to Qi. As one of the largest merchant guilds in Qi, the Four Seas Business Alliance was undoubtedly well informed." Jiang Wang knew that this was not a lie, especially when he personally felt the plague in his body and saw the plague bell shatter in front of his eyes. Could it be that this epidemic poison could really evolve, not just through the plague bell's catalysis during battle? Could this be the White Bone sect's real trump card? If even supernatural cultivators could not withstand this plague, then it was not just a matter of one city or one county. It was not just a matter of Yang country. Chapter 286. Jiang Wang pondered for a while and said under the bald commander's expectant gaze, "If this plague can really harm transcendent cultivators, then where can you run to now? Which route do you plan to take back to Qi? How can you be sure that the people you meet on the way don't carry the plague?" The bald commander hesitated. Jiang Wang continued, "In Xingyang town, at least all the infected people have been isolated and won't affect you and me. Once the epidemic virus mutates, we'll be able to detect it immediately. If the situation is really as bad as you think. At this time, it's dangerous to run around. Staying in Qingyang town is the safer choice. Jiang Wang didn't really admire this guard commander and was considerate of him. He was considering the lack of manpower in Qingyang town. The more difficult the situation was, the more power they needed to unite. If the guards of the Four Seas Business Alliance were used well, they could do a lot of things. But the bald commander hesitated for a long time and said, "I still want to go back to Qi, Mr. Jiang. Even if I accidentally get infected by the plague on the way, I'll accept it. It's better than waiting to die here." He gritted his teeth and said, "Our business alliance has a lot of dealings with the officials of the Yang Kingdom. To tell you the truth, I don't trust the Yang Kingdom's imperial court. As long as we go back to Qi, we'll be fine." Since he said so, Jiang Wang had no reason to stop him. Fighting against the plague was different from other things. There was no point in forcing people to stay. Dissatisfaction would only bring about the opposite effect. What about them? Do they all know the danger of running around? Who's willing to go back with you, and who's willing to stay? Jiang Wang asked. "We want to go back to Qi. We're all willing to go back. Mr. Jiang, you should go too. This broken place really can't do." None of the guards of the Four Seas Business Alliance in Qingyang town wanted to stay. They all wanted to go back to Qi, even if it was safer to stay in Qingyang town. Whether these people were good or evil, smart or stupid, they all had almost blind faith in Qi. This was the cohesion of a dominating country. It was also the pride and sense of belonging that a powerful country brought to its citizens. Jiang Wang sighed inwardly. He waved his hand and said, "If you want to go, then go. Don't take anything from Qingyang town." He let these people go and said to Xiang Qian and Xiao Xiao, "Let them go. Don't tell anyone about this for now. Gather everyone in the town hall, and we'll talk about it in detail." Jiang Wang went back first, intending to take a look at the great illusionary land. If even a deacon of the Four Seas Trade Alliance had received the news, then Cheng Sheng shouldn't have missed it. After entering the great illusionary realm, Cheng Sheng's fat paper crane had been circling around for a long time. Jiang Wang opened the letter and read, "Leave the Yang Kingdom as soon as possible. When the plague worsens, it can already kill transcendence." It had only been 2 days since he entered the great illusionary realm, but he didn't expect that he would almost miss such a big piece of news. In terms of time, Cheng Sheng should have sent the news earlier than Deacon Qian of the Four Seas Trade Alliance. But Jiang Wang naturally didn't want to leave. Not to mention what he said to the Trade Alliance guards, the safest choice in the entire Yang Kingdom right now was to stay where he was. Not to mention that if he fled now, he would be announcing that he was giving up all his previous efforts in the Yang Kingdom. He would only say one thing, and only mention the innocent people of Qingyang town. If he wanted to leave, Zhu Biqiong, Xiang Qian, Zhang Hai, Duga Xiao, and even the 2 medical cultivators from Zhenggenjia wouldn't stay either. In the current situation of the Yang Kingdom, if he took away all of the transcendents, who had been the backbone of the resistance against the plague, the order of the entire Qingyang town would immediately collapse. At this time, abandoning was equivalent to killing. He immediately wrote a reply to Cheng Sheng. After waiting for a while, there was no reply. So he left the great illusionary realm first. In the town hall, Zhu Biqiong, Xiang Qian, Zhang Hai, and Duga Xiao were all gathered. The 2 medical cultivators sent by Cheng Sheng were also called over. They were medical cultivators trained by the Zhenggenjia themselves and had nothing to do with the medical sects like the East King Valley. Medical cultivators were precious talents. Since Cheng Sheng had sent over a confirmed message, and Jiang Wang didn't want to leave, he didn't have to force them to stay. He asked directly, "How many infected people are there? How soon can the treatment be completed?" The 2 medical cultivators were sent by Cheng Sheng, and naturally wouldn't put on airs in front of Jiang Wang. The older of the 2, the Ascension State old man, said, "There are still 23 infected people. If we don't rest in the middle and there are no new cases, the treatment can be completed as soon as tomorrow." The younger one was his disciple, who was only in the wandering pulse state. He didn't say anything to the side. Cheng Sheng sent me a letter saying that the plague in the Yang Kingdom has mutated and can now attack transcendence. You naturally know what this means, and I don't need to say more. After the remaining infected people in Qingyang town are all treated, you can decide whether to stay or leave. Hearing this, Zhu Biqiong and Zhang Hai were shocked. However, Xiang Qian and Dugu Xiao already knew, so they didn't have such a big reaction. If we leave, what if there are still infected people in town? The old man thought for a moment. Prince Jiang doesn't plan to leave? The reason was simple. If Jiang Wang wanted to leave, he didn't have to say so much to them. He could have just left with the group, and no one could stop him now. Of course I won't leave. Hearing Jiang Wang's words, Zhang Hai couldn't tell whether he was relieved or worried. At this time, only he and Dugu Xiao were born and raised in the town hall. As for himself, his thoughts were also very complicated. If possible, of course, he hoped that the Yang Kingdom would be peaceful. But at the same time, he didn't want to put himself in danger. It was the instinct of living creatures to avoid danger. While he was hesitating, the old man from Qi said, "Then I won't leave either. However, just in case, let my disciple leave." A doctor had the heart of a parent. In the past, Shinnong tasted hundreds of herbs and survived countless dangers. What was it for? To save people. The school of medicine was first born with benevolence. "Old man, your disciple can leave now." Jiang Wang took out a 10,000 yuan stone from the storage box and put on the table. "Other than the consultation fee paid by Zhang Genjia, this is my personal gift." "Master," the young medical cultivator looked reluctant. The old doctor didn't hesitate. He took the 10,000 yuan stone and put it in his disciple's hand. He said with a straight face, "Now get back to Qi. It's just a plague. It can't do anything to me." The old doctor was usually very strict and had a lot of authority. The young doctor didn't dare to talk back. He just stood there with the 10,000 yuan stone, as if his feet were rooted to the ground. "Go!" The old doctor kicked him, and he left the town hall, looking back several times with each step he took. As a medical cultivator, he deeply understood the horror of this plague that could already harm transcendent cultivators. Just think about it. If an ordinary person was infected by the plague, they could only wait helplessly for death. And the old doctor chose to stay at this time, which showed his benevolence as a doctor. Jiang Wang heaved a sigh of relief when he chose to stay. If there were no medical cultivators, there was only one way to deal with the new, infected people. It was to isolate them from the outside world and let them die on their own. Jiang Wang's poisonous flower swallowing technique might not be effective even if he swallowed it until the end of time. After reaching a consensus with the outsiders, Jiang Wang said to the people on his side, "You all know the situation, so I have nothing else to say. You can decide whether to leave or stay. I won't force the people who leave to stay, but for the people who stay, we will work together to overcome the difficulties." After chatting for so long, everyone had a certain degree of mental preparation. The people who needed to make a decision had already made their decision. "Master, I'll be wherever you are." Dugu Xiao was the first to speak. "Everyone has to die." Qian Xiang said indifferently, "No matter how you die, you die." Jiang Wang really wanted to spit at him. How could he show his determination to vote in such a way? But then he thought that it was time to use people, so he resentfully gave up. Zhu Biqiong hurriedly stuffed something in her clothes and said with a strong aura, "The half-year I promised you hasn't arrived yet. I'm a woman of my word." Jiang Wang looked at her faintly. "The ball of fortune and disaster is quite calm. There's a bit of misfortune, but it's nothing." Zhu Biqiong generously waved her hand, then suddenly realized that she had exposed something. She stuck out her tongue and shrunk back like a quail. This time, Zhang Hai really let out a sigh of relief. Even if he wanted to run, there really wasn't anywhere he could go. The Yang Kingdom was his motherland. He had personally participated in the battle against the plague. Compared to the other places in the Yang Kingdom, he had a lot more confidence in Qingyang town's environment. Moreover, Zhu Biqiong's ball of fortune and disaster hadn't moved, which meant that it would be safe for at least a few days. "Sir Jiang, of course I won't leave." His voice was very loud. "There's no need to announce this." Jiang Wang made a decision. Move all the people from the villages under the town into the town and settle them down. Leave all the countryside for the vicious beasts. The other measures will be the same as before. The vicious beasts in Jia City's area and the serious situation were all handled by Jia City's transcendent cultivators. When Hu father and son took over Qingyang town, they also took over the responsibility of resisting the vicious beasts. When it came to Jiang Wang, it was the same now. However, now that they had to fight against the even more terrifying plague after the mutation, it was impossible to transfer people out. They had to give up on the countryside and centralize control. Under the situation where the internal plague was already under control, as long as the 4 main gates of Qingyang town were sealed, it would be enough to stop the plague from invading. Under the current circumstances, this was the method with the least pressure. After personally making a trip, Jiang Wang finally understood the current situation in the Yang Kingdom. The information that Cheng Gengsheng and the Four Seas Business Alliance had verified was correct. The plague that was wreaking havoc in the Yang Kingdom had indeed mutated to the point where it could harm transcendent cultivators. The first case of a transcendent cultivator dying of the plague appeared in U City's area. After that, there were 2 more cases in succession. For a time, the entire U City's area was in a state of panic. The situation that had taken a turn for the better once again fell into chaos and even collapsed. The main reason why U City's area collapsed so quickly was, after confirming that the plague had mutated, U City's mayor actually chose to abandon the city and flee. He abandoned hundreds of thousands of people in the city. Chapter 287. The Holy Master seemed to have been sitting in the underground palace for 100 years. Zhang Linchuan and Lu Yan were standing on either side of the throne. The atmosphere was tense. The rabbit-faced man standing behind Zhang Linchuan was so scared that he didn't even dare to breathe. A man wearing a dragon bone mask was standing in the middle of the throne. He didn't lean toward Zhang Linchuan or Lu Yan. He only faced the Saint Lord who was sitting on the throne. A man wearing a monkey bone mask stood next to him. Lu Yan closed her white eyes and said in a gloomy voice, "The plague hides, breeds, and grows in the bodies of ordinary people. Then it suddenly explodes, directly reaching the transcendent level and reaching perfection in one go. This was planned a long time ago, but it's so far off now. Zhang Linchuan, you asked for the right to command, but what did you do? You even used the Dharma idol left by the rat-faced man. Is this all you've got?" The Holy Master activated the plague bell in advance. Do you blame the Holy Master? Zhang Linchuan wasn't afraid of Elder Lu Yan's accusation. It could be seen that after the Battle of Maplewood City, his status in the White Bones sect had risen greatly. What does it have to do with the Holy Master? You didn't use her well. You gave something as important as the plague bell to Snakeface. Back in Maplewood City, she worked with the rat-faced man and the dog-faced man, but they died. She survived. How could you be so stupid to trust her? Doesn't that mean she's good at survival? Zhang Linchuan replied calmly. I thought about that too. Don't try to twist the truth. Lu Yan said angrily. Do you think I don't dare to kill you? Of course you dare. Just kill me in front of the Holy Master. Zhang Linchuan also seemed to be really angry. He no longer tried to maintain the peace. In any case, under your wise arrangements, the White Bone Path has already suffered a crushing defeat in Maplewood City. The higher-ups have either died in battle or were hunted down. I don't care if another messenger dies. You. Lu Yan was so angry that he couldn't speak. What about me? Yes, guiding the plague is so important that it shouldn't be the responsibility of a weakling. But who could move? Your arrangement allowed Zhuang Chengxian to advance to the next level and allowed Duru Hui to break free from his shackles. With Duru Hui from so close, yet so far, Duru Hui, who can move, you or me? Lu Yan gritted her teeth for a long time before she turned around and looked at the dragon bone face. Dragon face, what do you say? Among the 12 bone faces of the White Bone Path, the rat face was the head of the 12 bone faces. Purely in terms of combat strength, the dragon face was the strongest among them. Among the 12 white bone faces, he was the only one who had opened the inner mansion. In terms of strength, he was on par with Zhang Linchuan. Therefore, compared to the other white bone masked beings, his status was slightly higher. It was just that he had been cultivating in seclusion for a long time and didn't move much outside. So he wasn't as notorious as the other white-skinned men. Lu Yan's question seemed to be asking Long Mian to make his stance clear, but she was also complaining that he was often in seclusion, so there was no one in the sect that could be used. Although Zhang Linchuan was poking at Lu Yan's sore spot, the Battle of Maplewood City was over. Even if the Holy Master didn't understand worldly affairs, it was impossible for him to bring up old scores at this time. Therefore, this sore spot was actually neither painful nor itchy. There were many twists and turns in this. The eyes of the monkey-faced man standing beside Long Mian flickered, but he didn't say a word. Second Elder. Long Mian's voice was full of energy. Why don't we kill Duruhue? It'll save you from being so timid that you don't even dare to leave the underground palace. Lu Yan. Duruhue was a third-stage divine, a rival realm expert. Looking at the entire white bone sect's strongest combat strength, Lu Yan was only a fourth-stage outer mansion realm expert. The Bone Envoy, the Saintess, and Long Mian were 3 inner mansion realm experts. As for the Holy Master's strength, the white bone god's awakening in the body of the white bone path disciple would definitely be far stronger than when he could only attack through the mark. However, how much he could use was a mystery. What was more obvious was that the Holy Master would not easily reveal the mystery himself. In other words, if they wanted to set a trap to kill Duruhue, they could only rely on them. How to kill him? That was Duruhue, who had the so close, yet worlds apart ability. 2 or 3 divine arrival realm experts might not be able to stop him. However, looking at Long Mian's eyes full of fighting spirit and fighting spirit, Lu Yan knew that he was not joking or mocking anyone. These are his true thoughts. Boorish man. Thinking of this, Lu Yan even forgave him for calling her second elder. Who didn't know that the white bone path only had 1 elder now? Those who emphasized the ranking of the second elder were most likely mocking him. As for the remaining 2, they were probably people like Long Mian or Pig Mian. Cough. Seeing that Lu Yan was speechless, Zhang Linchuan coughed lightly and said, "Let's put Duruhue's matter aside for now. The most important thing now is the Holy Master's grand plan." The Holy Master used the plague that wreaked havoc in the country to refine it into a plague incarnation and achieve the white bone saint body. Now that it has been triggered in advance, it's not perfect enough. What can we do? Lu Yan snorted coldly. Isn't it because you chose the position and sent people? Look, Zhang Linchuan spread out his hands. It's back to the question of why I have no one to use. The 2 of them were pushing and shoving each other here like 2 gangsters on the street, constantly saying, "Come over here." They looked aggressive, but in fact they were just talking nonsense. The Holy Lady was not even in the underground palace. No one knew what she was busy with. Since Maplewood City, these people seemed to be even further apart. Long Mian looked up. The Holy Master was still sitting there, expressionless and silent. No one knew if he was listening. If the Holy Master did not have an attitude, he would not have an attitude either. Monkey Mian, Rabbit Mian. Long Mian said, "Come closer." The monkey-faced man was standing beside him, so his words were directed at the rabbit-faced man. Rabbit Mian looked at Zhang Linchuan with some fear. Zhang Linchuan nodded slightly, and she moved a few steps closer to Long Mian uneasily. "Let me ask you, Pig Mian is dead." Long Mian paused and continued. Among the 12 people, he was the craziest and the stupidest, but only he really treated you as brothers and sisters. Don't you feel sorry for him at all? Rabbit Mian shrank her neck and did not dare to make sound. The more she acted like this, the angrier Long Mian was. But he knew that this woman was now in Zhang Linchuan's faction. The Holy Master still needed these people. If he did not want to ruin the Holy Master's grand plan, he could only endure it. Monkey Mian was silent for a while and said, "Only 3 of us are left among the 12 people." He looked at Long Mian. "Brother Long, do you think I'll be able to bear it if I'm sad?" Long Mian was speechless. Lu Yan closed her eyes. Her face was gloomy, and her thoughts could not be seen clearly. Zhang Linchuan hid all his expressions under the mask, and only a pair of eyes with emotions that were difficult to understand could be seen. Everyone in this underground palace hall had a different face and a different mood. No one knew what anyone was really thinking. Even someone as great as the Holy Master dared to say that he had truly understood his will. At this moment, the Holy Master, who was sitting upright, spoke indifferently. "Time is up," he said. Chapter 288. The Four Seas Business Alliance's trade routes were very mature. Even in a place like Yang, where there were large numbers of fearsome beasts, they still had their own safe passage. Of course, a large part of it relied on the official roads of Yang. In order to allow a business alliance like the Four Seas Business Alliance to enter Yang Court had made many concessions. The bald guard commander, Chen Yong, who had escaped from Qingyang town, led his team through the Four Seas Business Alliance's trade route. They left Rizhao Prefecture directly and entered Qi from Baichuan City, a city at the border of Qi. The Four Seas Business Alliance did not officially announce the mutation of the plague internally. To the Four Seas Business Alliance, they had paid a great deal of sincerity to accept the disaster relief business of Yang. They had invested a lot of manpower and resources in Yang and were reaping the benefits. Unless it was absolutely necessary, they would not be willing to leave. For this, they were willing to sacrifice some of their subordinates. Manager Qian had received the news through his own private channels and escaped immediately. He did not intend to inform anyone else. Chen Yong, who had been shaved bald in Qingyang town, had also received the news through his personal connections. He was loyal and brought back the entire team of guards that he was in charge of. Of course, if the news was false, he would also have to bear the responsibility for leaving the matter of Qingyang town alone. But compared to the safety of his life, that was nothing. Baichuan City was not named because there were 100 rivers near the city. In fact, there were no famous rivers in the city at all. The name of the city was derived from the meaning of the sea accommodates all rivers. As for which river it accommodated, that was a matter of opinion. Baichuan City belonged to Dingyao Prefecture. When Jiang Wang came to Yang, he also passed through Fengxian and Dingyao to reach Rizhao Prefecture of Yang. But at that time, he was unimpeded. But now, Qinyang's team of guard was blocked outside the city. More accurately, they were at least 3 miles away from Baichuan City. "Halt your steps. We are under orders to seal the border. If you dare to take another step forward, you will be killed without mercy." A shout came from afar. The voice came from a group of fully armored soldiers from the state of Qi. Chen Yong immediately broke out in cold sweat. His subordinates, who were arrogant because of the reputation of the Four Seas Trade Alliance, were all silent at this moment. All of them stood still obediently, afraid that a wrong move would cause a misunderstanding. This was a standard Qi soldier. From the looks of it, they might even be one of the 9 soldiers. Chen Yong could even hear the sound of the spell breaker crossbow being loaded. The spell-breaking crossbow, which was widely used in the military, was a lethal weapon specially designed to deal with transcendent cultivators. It was not circulated in the market at all, and it was a serious crime to buy or sell it. A transcendent cultivator like him didn't even have the chance to resist a volley of spell-breaking crossbows. "Sir! Sir!" Chen Yong didn't dare to move. He shouted, "We are all Qi people. If they are good people, don't hurt them." "Qi people?" he heard a voice ask. Then, a person who looked like a general walked out of the formation, still maintaining a sufficient distance from them. "How can you prove that you are Qi people?" The entire Yang country admired the Qi people. There were countless people who wore Qi clothes and spoke Qi language, so it was hard to tell if they were real or not. "We are the guards of the Four Seas Trade Alliance. We have tokens on us. Sir, you can take them for yourself." "This lowly one does not dare to lie," the general said. "You are not allowed to come close. Throw the token over." Chen Yong didn't dare to disobey and did as he was told. The general took the token from afar and examined it carefully. Then he asked, "The people behind you are all Qi people? We have a register in the Four Seas Trade Alliance. You will know if you check it. How can it be fake?" Chen Yong said, "Sir, please do us a favor. We are all Chi people and are homesick. If I may ask, why can't we return to our country today? The border has been sealed. Even Chi people can't return to their country now, the general said casually. Then he ordered, take these people from the Four Seas Trade Alliance to the camp and lock them up, just like before. Chen Yong trembled. He didn't know what just like before meant. However, Chi's military was very strict. The 9 soldiers of Chi were famous throughout the world. Once the military order was given, there was no turning back. He didn't dare to say anything. Being led into the camp by the Chi soldiers, Chen Yong had a plan in his mind. From the way these soldiers kept their distance, it was likely that they already knew about the plague in the Yang Kingdom. It was likely that this was the reason why the border was sealed off. If that was the case, it made sense that these people who came back from Yang country were temporarily locked up. It was just the same tactic of isolating them from the outside world. From this, it could be seen that they were currently very safe, as long as they didn't get infected with the plague and didn't cause trouble in the camp. When he thought this through, Chen Yong felt much more at ease in his heart, and he had the leisure to chat and joke with this group of old brothers who were perplexed and uneasy behind him. What are you afraid of? With our invincible Chi army escorting us, is there a safer time than now? A younger guard sniffed. I don't know how long we are going to be locked up. Speaking of which, why are we being locked up? Are we not even allowed to return to our country? Shut up if you shouldn't ask. Chen Yong scolded him harshly. He looked up and saw that the soldier leading the way didn't say anything. Only then did he relax and comfort the others. The Four Seas is Chi's biggest trading company. How can the entire Chi survive without us? We didn't do anything wrong, so we won't be locked up for too long. Besides, if we're really in a hurry to go home, we can just bleed a little more and ask Officer Qian to bail us out. From beginning to end, the soldier leading the way didn't say a word. Even when Chen Yong hinted at bribery, he didn't react. This made Chen Yong and the others consciously or unconsciously behave themselves and follow obediently. Chen Yong's confidence disappeared after he saw Officer Qian. That was the second day he was locked up in the camp. A soldier came over and asked him to go out alone. Along the way, he was uneasy and tried all sorts of things, but the other party ignored him. If he asked too much, he would be kicked. He could only shut up. At one point, he thought it was blackmail or something like that, and was prepared to bleed a lot. He even imagined the horror of being tortured by military law. The more helpless people were in a helpless situation, the easier it was for them to scare themselves. Fortunately, the other party only asked him to go out and identify a person. It didn't seem to be any better because the person he wanted to identify was Officer Qian. He still hoped that Officer Qian would bail him out sooner. In the end, Officer Qian couldn't even protect himself and even needed to ask him for help at this moment. Chen Yong walked to the location where the Qi army set up the checkpoint and saw Officer Qian from afar. At that time, Officer Qian's hair was shaved off by someone and he was kneeling on the ground from afar. He was completely dispirited and lost his bearing. Didn't Officer Qian escape back to Qi a day earlier? What happened in between? Why did he only arrive in by Chuan City today? Why was he one day later than him? Qingyang Town, Jiangwang, Four Seas Merchant Alliance, Officer Qian, Yang Country, Qi Army. Chen Yong only felt that his mind was in a mess and his bald head was cold. P.S. There will be an update at 12 o'clock in the evening. Chapter 289. Guard Chun. Seeing Chen Yong walk over, Manager Qian was instantly energized. However, due to the arrows aimed at him, he did not dare to get up. He just knelt there and tried his best to be friendly. Quick, tell these soldiers that I'm really the manager of the Four Seas Business Alliance. Third grade manager. My surname is Qian. The managers of the Four Seas Business Alliance were split into 3 grades. Third grade was the lowest and first grade was the highest. They were in charge of the business of the alliance. Above them, there were 9 honorary managers. These managers were just a name and did not care about normal matters. The only time they were needed was when dealing with other officials and nobles in Qi. Even though Manager Qian was just a third-grade manager, he was still quite powerful. The reason why he ended up like this was hard to explain. He had not been in Jia City for long, but he had already taken a large amount of wealth. Using the chance of obtaining large amounts of life-saving resources, he sold them at a high price, causing all the families in Jia City to suffer greatly. Not to mention the fact that the Shi family had already left and Jia City had lost its backbone. Even if the Shi family was still there, what could they do against the Four Seas Business Alliance? They were still at the mercy of the Four Seas Business Alliance. Even Yanting relied on the Four Seas Business Alliance to help, so they did not dare to offend them. To Manager Qian, this was just a small matter, and it was something that the Four Seas Business Alliance agreed to. But because Jia City didn't have a leader, what he did was a bit too much. However, the problem was that a large portion of the wealth he took was kept in his own pocket and was not given to the Four Seas Business Alliance. He could not see the light of day. When he found out about the mutation of the plague, he immediately took everything he could and left. Just the gold and silver items alone filled up dozens of boxes. To hide his wealth, he hid his identity and purposely took a detour to Pingxi Prefecture. It was also one of the border prefectures of Qi. He knew how scary the mutation of the plague was, but he did not know how strict the Qi army was in locking down the border. First, he did not reveal his identity, afraid that the Four Seas Business Alliance would find out. He also tried to bribe the soldiers when negotiating with them. In the end, he was almost killed on the spot. In the end, he had no choice but to reveal his identity. However, because of his previous actions, he was chased out. Of course, more than half of his belongings were confiscated. It was said that this was because he was a deacon of the Four Seas Trade Alliance. Left with no choice, Manager Qian could only turn back and follow the trade route of the Four Seas Commerce Alliance, returning to his country through Dingyao Prefecture. However, the border blockade was getting stricter by the day, and he had lost his waist tag in the previous painful experience, so he could not prove his identity. The pitiful Manager Qian was almost killed on the spot. Fortunately, the soldiers guarding the checkpoint remembered that they had detained a group of people from the Four Seas Business Alliance the day before yesterday. Only then did they call Chun Yong over to identify them. How much loyalty could a superior who took all the benefits and fled when there was danger? If possible, Chun Yong really wanted to say that he didn't know this fellow and let the soldiers kill Manager Qian. However, his good friend was also kneeling behind Manager Qian at this moment. He was in a very miserable state. The two of them pretended not to know each other and didn't even look at each other. "Hey," Chun Yong said, "Deacon, why are you here?" "It's a long story." Manager Qian looked at the soldiers guarding the checkpoint and said politely, "Soldiers, can I stand up now?" In his heart, he wanted to find someone to use his connections to teach these soldiers a lesson after returning to his country. However, he had no choice but to submit in front of a crossbow. Since his identity was verified and he was from Qi, the soldiers guarding the checkpoint did not make things difficult for him. "Stand up." When he saw Chun Yong, Manager Qian was very surprised. However, he was a cunning person. Of course, he would not ask questions like why Chun Yong was here. He had left his work and returned to Qi at this time, so he naturally knew about the mutation of the plague. However, he did not tell this subordinate of his at all. However, someone like Manager Qian would not feel embarrassed at all. He only pretended to be concerned and asked, "Did you suffer?" "Hey, the soldiers are all very disciplined. How could we suffer?" Chun Yong said, "Deacon, what's the situation now? Our brothers are very uneasy." "All right, is this a place for you to chat?" The soldiers scolded and interrupted them. "Disperse." "Hey," Manager Qian heard the scolding and led the way to Baichuan City. "I said disperse. Go back." The soldiers suddenly raised their crossbows and aimed at them. "No, didn't I already prove that I'm from Qi?" Manager Qian was confused. "I'm a manager of the Four Seas Business Alliance. I don't care who you are. We received orders not to allow anyone from Yang country to enter." The soldier said, "If you want to enter, show us the military's letter." As for the general who was in charge the day before, he was not here. Manager Qian was very angry, but he knew that he could not vent his anger on these soldiers. Even if they killed him while carrying out their orders, No one would stand up for him. The knife is in my heart. I'll endure it. Then what about him? Manager Qian pointed at Chen Yong and asked. He can't enter the city either. He's being detained in the barracks now. Then you could detain us too. I can wait. No matter what. Manager Qian could not return to Yang country now. That would be too scary. But he only received a cold reply from the soldier, no. Why? I'm also from Qi. Manager Qian suppressed his anger. Yesterday was yesterday. Today is today. Every day, the situation will become more serious. You can still retreat now. Come back tomorrow, and you will be killed without mercy. Don't you know the situation in Yang country now? Do you want me to go back and wait for death? Manager Qian only felt a ball of hot blood rush to his head. What humiliation! What long days ahead! He couldn't care less about that. But the soldier raised his crossbow and poured a bucket of ice water on him. Or you can die now. Manager Qian was speechless. In the end, Chen Yong could only watch as Manager Qian left with his men, including his good friends. But he did not dare to say anything. It would be useless to say anything. In front of the cruel situation of life and death. The connections and relationships that he was so proud of in the past were so fragile. Manager Qian took the remaining portion of his belongings and took a detour. He would rather pay more customs fees so that he could borrow another country's route to return to the capital. But then he realized in horror that it was not just the road back to Qi from Yang country. The entire Yang country was locked up by the army. As everyone knew, Qi had 9 elite armies called the 9 Soldiers. They were Death of Spring, Corpse of Summer, Death of Autumn, and Solitude of Winter. They were chasing wind, cutting rain, subduing thunder, and imprisoning lightning. The first of the 9 soldiers was called Overturning Heaven. It was the army of the Emperor of Qi. Now it was led by the Qi's military god, Jiang Mengxiong. Manager Qian used his connections to investigate and finally got some information. The army that locked down the entire Yang country was called Death of Autumn. It was one of the 9 soldiers of Qi. It was a top-notch killing army, the strongest army in the world. What was Qi Ting trying to do? Why didn't the Commerce Alliance get any information beforehand? It was the end of July. It was already autumn. Autumn came, Death of Autumn's army. Chapter 290. Meanwhile, in Hundred River City, the young general who was supposed to be guarding the checkpoint had appeared on the city gate tower and was saying something to a fatty who was sitting on a large chair. This fatty was fat and had a gentle expression. He didn't look dignified at all. However, on the city gate tower, the soldiers guarding the city were all standing there with a cold aura. He was the only one sitting there, so he naturally looked arrogant. That's how it is. If he dares to touch Cheng Gung Sheng, I will skin him clean. The fatty said fiercely. What about the rest of the people from the Four Seas Commerce Alliance? The young general asked. Is it the same as before? Everyone from Qi will be checked. After confirming that there is no plague, they will be released back to their country. People from foreign countries are not allowed to leave the country. Kill anyone who tries to barge in. As for the people from the Four Seas Commerce Alliance, no matter which country they belong to, all their money and goods will be confiscated. Cheng Gungsheng narrowed his eyes and asked, Is there anything unclear about my uncle's military order? His uncle was naturally Chongxian Chu Liang, who was known as the Vicious Butcher. He was also the highest-ranking general of the Qiu Offense Army. This military order had no restrictions before the word kill. This meant that not only were the people from the weak countries like Yang country and Rong country not allowed to enter the country, but everyone in Yang country, including Jing country, Chu country, Qin country, and Mu country, were no exception. This was the power of Qi as the overlord of the East, and also Chongxian Chu Yang's undisguised murderous nature. When he was in his normal state, and when he was leading, he was a completely different person. Very clear. The young general immediately expressed his stance. Then go. Behind Cheng Gung, Sheng stood 14, who was fully clad in armor. Compared to Cheng Gung Sheng, who wore his wide robe as a tight-fitting suit, 14's aura was more suitable for the city. No matter what Cheng Gung Sheng said to others, 14 maintained a silence. Chung Sheng didn't mind either. I came so suddenly. Do you think Jiang Wang will mind? Without waiting for 14 to answer, he answered himself. It's human nature to hold grudges. I hope that the one surnamed Qian can vent his anger. If Deacon Qian knew that it was all because of Chung Sheng's secret instruction that he ran into a wall one after another and couldn't escape after getting the news in advance, would he regret his extortion in Qingyang town? Maybe not, but it doesn't matter anymore. Because there was no medicine for regret. Chung Sheng stood on top of the city gate tower and looked into the distance. He could not help but say, they still have to use Uncle's name to suppress the army. It really makes me unhappy. He had too many things on his mind at every moment. He used too much of his brain, and his body didn't want to move at all. With such a huge body, once he moved, he had to be worthy of the effort he put in. I'm too fat, that's why. Chung Sheng supported himself with the armrest and stood up at the top of 100 River City. This chair is too small. Qingyang town. Jiang Wang gathered all the people in the town. For a time, it was overcrowded. He collected all the supplies and implemented a distribution system. He limited the number of people and tried his best to ensure that everyone had something to eat. No one could understand his decision. In other people's eyes, the only way to fight against the plague was to isolate the inside and outside and stop the infection. Although the plague had mutated and become more dangerous and terrible, the core principle of dealing with the plague should not have changed. Qingyang town had always done this before. Suddenly changing their tune and gathering everyone together was undoubtedly a very risky decision. Even if Qingyang town had almost completely controlled the plague at present. But in Jiang Wang's eyes, the plague had attacked the transcendent cultivators, which meant that the only force that could fight against the plague had been lost. Before there was a new alternative, the collapse of the situation was almost inevitable. In some extreme cases, people were more terrible than the plague. Jiang Wang did not want to imagine those situations, but he could not deny their existence. In the end, his move was not to fight against the mutated plague, but to fight against the possible riots after the collapse of the situation. In the great illusionary realm, Chung Sheng had not responded. Jiang Wang guessed that it must be related to the military secrets he had mentioned before. But now that he was in the Yang Kingdom, he really did not know who Qi's army was directed at. He also did not know what role Chung Sheng played in this. But there was no doubt that Yung Ganzuan, whom he had not met until now, gave Chung Sheng too much pressure. So much so that this fat man never dared to relax. Even now, when he had the qualifications to gamble at the table, he often felt like he was walking on thin ice. Jiang Wang could only do his best. First, he could increase his strength, and second, he could strengthen his forces. For the time being, he could not do anything else. At this time, he still did not know that Qi's army had surrounded the Yang Kingdom. With Qi's strength, he could easily isolate the Yang Kingdom from the outside and make the people in the Yang Kingdom blind and deaf. Mute. Not to mention that the Yang Kingdom had been a vassal state for many years. They had never set up defenses against Qi. Setting up defenses meant that they had ulterior motives. How would the Yang Kingdom dare to do so? That was why Qi's attack on the Yang Kingdom was so sudden and yet so well executed. Of course, in Jiang Wang's opinion, the Yang Kingdom would eventually receive Qi's help. After all, the Yang Kingdom was a vassal state of Qi. To a certain extent, it represented Qi's reputation. Qi could not just ignore it. Everything he had done so far was to hold on until Qi's help arrived. From his interactions with the Yang Kingdom's officials, the entire Yang Kingdom's bureaucracy was somewhat unambitious and blindly arrogant. With a vassal state next to them, they had no room for improvement. The governor of Yu City was the representative of those who were unambitious. It could even be said that he did not do anything. On the other hand, arrogance came from the fact that the Sun Country, represented by the Rizhao County chief, took pride in being a vassal state of the Qi Country. They took the glory of the Qi Country as their own glory, and the strength of the Qi Country as their own. They were all Qi people in spirit. At least, from what Jiang Wang had seen and heard, he did not think that the Yang kingdom would perform well against the mutated plague. At least, there was a high chance that Rizhao County would collapse. Even so, Jiang Wang could not save the entire Rizhao County. Qingyang Town was his limit. He did not even have the confidence to protect Qingyang Town. But if he did, he could use Qingyang Town as a base to grab the biggest piece of meat for himself and Chenggongsheng. Imagine a collapsed Yang kingdom, a country that had to rebuild from the ashes. How many chances would there be? And no matter how strong the external forces were, no one would be able to compete with Qingyang Town's natural advantages. Everything depended on whether Qingyang Town could become the flag that would not fall in the ruins. These were all things that Jiang Wang thought about independently. From the Zhuang Kingdom, to the Yun Kingdom, to the Blessed Kingdom, to Qi, and now the Yang Kingdom. Everything that he saw made him confused and lost. He had been thinking about the meaning of the country and the power of the system. Now, he had some ideas. Although they were not yet mature, they were very clear. Chapter 291. A storm is coming, and the wind is sweeping across the building. Qingyang Town and even the entire Jia City appeared to be very peaceful. Shi Zichu was dead, the Shi family had left, and the new mayor of Jia City had already taken office. He still respected the Zheng Genji's authority over Qingyang Town. In the eyes of most of the people in Yang Country, this year was a year of bad luck. There was a terrible outbreak of the plague, many people died, and a few incompetent bureaucrats were exposed. But that was it. The incompetent bureaucrats were punished, the plague was contained, and the country's situation was turning for the better, at least in the eyes of many people. Only a small number of people knew about the plague, and the army's siege of Yang Country had just happened. Now, only the people in power in Zhaoheng City were discussing countermeasures. Thus, the atmosphere in the Yang Kingdom was still subtly peaceful at the moment. Jiang Wang made the atmosphere in Qingyang Town very tense. He kept asking Zhu Biqiong to set up more illusion formations, and even took out Dao origin stones for her to replenish at any time. He almost filled up all the roads into Qingyang Town. His Dao origin stones couldn't hold up, and Zhu Biqiong was already on the verge of collapse. I can't. I want to rest. Zhu Biqiong was dizzy and disoriented, and complained incessantly. The number of illusion formations she set up in these few days was almost as many as she set up in a month. She had never worked so hard in the past when she cultivated in the fishing sea tower. Xiao Xiao rushed up and massaged her shoulders and legs, coaxing her as a good sister. These few days, she had half coaxed and half lied to make Zhu Biqiong rush. Come on. Zhu Biqiong curled her lips. I can see that you have no conscience. No matter what I teach you, no matter how I treat you, your heart is always with your master. That's right. Xiao Xiao massaged her shoulders professionally. My heart is with you, sister, but it's with master. TSK, I don't usually see you being so sweet. You and your master are really family. When you need people, you welcome them, and when you don't need them, you throw them away like a pair of worn-out shoes. Jiang Wang stood to the side and watched the scene outside Qingyang Town, pretending not to understand the complaints in her words. The sky was actually warm, and a few white clouds were leisurely floating in the sky. Fang Jin, who had already taken a nap, walked out from the shade of the tree and couldn't help but ask, "Do you really think there will be a change here? It's not just a feeling." Jiang Wang didn't look away and said, "Don't you smell danger?" He then shouted to Zhu Biqiong, "Dao friend Zhu, can you use your ball of fortune and disaster?" Zhu Biqiong glanced at Xiao Xiao as if to say, "Am I right? Look at your master." He replied loudly, "Not yet." Fang Chong hesitated for a while before saying reluctantly, "I have a sword formation that might be of use, but it's best if you don't use it." Zhaoheng City, Sun Court Palace. Yang Jinda, the 27th emperor of the Yang Kingdom, attended the court for the first time. To be more precise, there was a mutation of the plague internally. The transcendent cultivators were all in danger, and the Qi army had suddenly surrounded the borders of the country. In just one night, the Yang kingdom was thrown into a state of turmoil and was on the brink of destruction. However, Yang Jianda was still cultivating in the Yangshin palace, as if he didn't want to pay attention to the situation. He wanted to let the crown prince take over the government, as usual, and let the officials assist him to deal with this situation. It was the crown prince of the Yang kingdom, Yang Xuanji, who begged him to come to the palace and hold this court meeting. Under the Pill Emperor, the officials all had different opinions. Their voices were loud, but none of them had a definite plan. The Qi army's power was deeply rooted in the hearts of the people. Even if they only sent an army, the Yang kingdom would have no chance of winning. As for the current situation, the officials of the Yang kingdom were in despair. On the dragon throne, Yang Jinda was drowsy. The reason why he didn't leave was because he was waiting for the main event. However, he didn't expect the foreplay to be so long, which made him feel bored. Father. The crown prince of the Yang kingdom's voice made him feel energized. He resisted the thought of cultivating and sat up straight. As the actual ruler of the Yang kingdom in recent years, the moment the crown prince of the Yang kingdom spoke, the entire court became quiet. From a noisy place like a vegetable market, it had turned back into a solemn place. The crown prince of the Yang kingdom stood at the head of the officials, facing Yang Jinda. He was tall and had a broad face. Akin thinks that it is time to change the Yang kingdom's centuries-old disease. Oh, Yang Jinda's expression didn't change. How? The crown prince of the Yang kingdom was prepared. He said loudly, "The first step is for you to issue a decree, confess your mistakes, and seek forgiveness from the people." As Yang Jinda's most trusted eunuch, Eunuch Lu Huai, who was always by his side, immediately shouted, "Crown Prince, don't forget the order of seniority." In the battle between the crown prince and the other princes, of course he would stand on the crown prince's side. He knew very well that Yang Jinda had no intention of changing the crown prince. Moreover, none of the other princes were a threat to the crown prince. However, if the crown prince challenged the king, he would also stand on the king's side. As a eunuch, he knew very well that everything he had was given to him by Yang Jinda. His existence depended on Yang Jinda, and his loyalty could only be given to Yang Jinda. And today, in the imperial court, he was shocked to find that the crown prince had actually issued a challenge, and in such a precarious situation. Before he could think, he instinctively shouted to stop him. But eunuch, the crown prince of the Yang kingdom, pointed at him angrily. "I'm talking to my father. Is there any place for you to interrupt? The imperial court is corrupted because my father trusted a scoundrel like you." The crown prince had always been gentle and kind. He used to call him Eunuch Lu with great respect, and he had never broken his heart. But today he actually pointed at him and called him a eunuch. Lu Huai felt humiliated, followed by anger and hatred, but he didn't dare to speak up. Eunuchs were the emperor's servants. As the future ruler of the Yang kingdom, the crown prince had every right to scold his own servant. Yang Jin himself was very calm. He waved his hand and dismissed Lu Huai. He sat on the dragon throne and leaned forward slightly, looking down at the crown prince he had chosen. "Guilty? I like to hear what my crime is." Lu Huai retreated to a corner. When he heard the emperor's words, tears welled up in his eyes. He wasn't crying for the humiliation he had suffered, but for Yang Jinda. As the emperor of the Yang kingdom, Yang Jinda didn't refer to himself as father in the imperial court. He seemed calm and composed, but there was a hint of weakness and pleading within. Others might not know, but Lu Huai had served the emperor for most of his life. How could not know? Since ancient times, the emperor had no familial ties, but he yearned for them. "May I ask, father?" The crown prince immediately replied without hesitation. It was obvious that he had been suppressing this for a long time. "Without your own calendar, you have lost your own words. What is a country? How can a country be a country?" Yang Jinda was silent for a while, then said, "These two things were indeed carried out by my hands. It is my fault." Author's note, updated at 12 p.m. Chapter 292. The ruler of a country valued his authority the most. Everyone could be wrong, but the ruler could not be wrong. Everyone could be guilty, but the ruler could not be guilty. He held the highest authority, so how could he be guilty? Who could judge him? Even if he sinned against the world, how could he offend the ruler? From ancient times until now, whenever a ruler was convicted, it was when he had already lost his power. Those hypocritical self-condemnation were nothing more than self-deceiving and punishing themselves with 3 cups of wine. Today, Yang Xuanji forced Yang Jianda to confess, and it was not as simple as saying, "I am unvirtuous." The 2 crimes of throwing away the calendar and abandoning words were not something to be taken lightly on any ruler. It would be written in the history books and be nailed to the pillar of shame. In Yang country, where the calendar and words were gradually being removed, this had always been a taboo topic. No one dared to talk about such a topic, and no one could bear such a responsibility. Many people felt that perhaps only when Yang Jianda ascended to the heavens would the responsibility be determined. It would be pushed by the descendants. Therefore, when Yang Jianda directly admitted that it was his responsibility in the main hall of Yang court, many people were stunned on the spot. Especially the crown prince of Yang country, Yang Xuanji. He had prepared a lot of evidence and many backup plans to deal with how to make Yang Jianda confess. He thought that he had planned step by step and would not miss. But now that Yang Jianda directly confessed, he was at a loss as to what to do. But after all, he had been through many years, so he quickly reacted and continued. So Yang Jianda interrupted him. So I should bind myself naked and kneel to the imperial army? Comfort the ruler and pacify the commoners? Even though the crown prince of Yang country was shrewd, he still looked embarrassed. No matter what, whether as a subject or a son, he should not have said this. But if it were not for the current situation, he would not have done this. This, then, Yang Xuanji stuttered, quickly organizing his words in his mind. When the country is in danger and the country is unstable, as the ruler and father, I should bear some responsibility. And then, what do you plan to do after you ascend the throne? Yang Jianda asked from the dragon throne, pressing step by step. Directly attack the Qi palace with the army. The crown prince was the future ruler of the country, and Yang Xuanji had been in charge for many years. Although his reputation was a little bad, there was no need for him to not admit what he had done. Seeing that Yang Jianda was so direct, he said directly, "After I ascend to the throne, I will not forget today's hatred." It was necessary to work hard for the country. Internally, national politics. Diplomatically, strong neighbors. With the strength of the entire country, elite troops, and strong armies, they formed alliances with Jin and Mu. In the future, I will definitely avenge this nation. He spoke passionately and passionately. Yang Jianda only asked, what if Qi doesn't allow it? If Qi still doesn't allow the Yang family to enter the ancestral temple, what do you plan to do? Qi's army has locked down the border because they are afraid of the spread of the virus after the mutation. As long as I control the virus, this siege will be resolved. The officials of the Yang country had been in Qi for many years and had always been respectful. If Lord Qi dares to not allow my Yang family to enter the ancestral temple, are you not afraid of the criticism of the world? Yang Xuanji spoke frankly and was extremely confident. Or rather, he had to show that he was confident and that he could take over the country. Only then would those who supported him not waver. I won't ask you where you get the confidence to control the mutated virus. Yang Jianda almost burst out laughing, but he did not know where to start laughing. He really should not laugh. So he only asked, do you really think that Zhongshuan Chuyang, that bastard, led the Qiu slaughter army here just to stop the spread of the plague to the Qi border? If it's just for this, 1 general and 2 troops would be enough to guard the border. Is there anyone in the Yang country who dares to touch the whiskers of a tiger? He patted the armrest of a throne. Is there a need to mobilize 9 troops and send Xiong Tu? What kind of person is this Xiong Tu? Go take a look at the lost land of Great Xia and ask those dead souls. So what if he's Xiong Tu? Can't Xiong Tu communicate? Does Xiong Tu have no weaknesses? "Father, don't be scared out of your wits. It's not 30 years ago now. Chongxian Chu Yang is old," Yang Xuanji said angrily. "There are many ways to deal with him. He could have smoothly taken over the government and calmly realized his ambitions. But in one night, the world changed, and the wind and rain swayed. Seeing the throne in his hands turn into a mess, he was anxious, angry, and uneasy. He almost broke down. To be able to recover quickly, make a decision, and gather the officials to kneel and ask Yang Jinda to convene a court meeting, and then force him to abdicate using internal and external forces. This was already a rare shrewdness. But even so, in front of the cruel truth that Yang Jinda coldly exposed, his will was still in a daze. He was angry. His anger wasn't because of hatred or injustice, but because of uneasiness. It was because he felt danger, and he felt powerless. He roared in the hall, as if to prove that he wasn't afraid of Chongxian Chu Liang. "With the resources of a Yang country, is it not enough to move my heart? Whatever he wants, I'll give it to him until he feels pain. If it doesn't work, I'll hire someone to assassinate him. If it doesn't work, I'll cede a piece of land to him, a piece of land, a city, or even a county. Can't I just ask him to retreat once? Just give me time. Just give me time. Cede a piece of land for peace." Yang Jinda once again interrupted his high spirits. "Is this your true intention?" He laughed coldly. "But you want me to go? You want me, a sinner who brings disaster to the country, to bear the shame of ceding a piece of land again? The situation is like this. Ceding a piece of land is just a delaying tactic. We could just cede Rizhao County and throw the mutated plague to them. Anyway, with the strength of Qi, we have our ways. Only by traveling light can we move forward with great strides." Yang Xuanji's voice softened. It was a kind of calmness that was almost cold. "Father, for the sake of the ancestral temple. Yang country already has a fatuous ruler. We can't have another one. Otherwise, the hearts of the people will be completely broken. So, only you can cede a piece of land." Unexpectedly, Yang Jinda wasn't angry. Instead, he asked calmly, "And then, although it's painful, only by removing the ulcers can we recover. The internal and external troubles are all gone. Yang country's people and people will be united. What's there to worry about?" Yang Xuanji became more and more excited as he spoke. He pointed at the country and said with great vigor, 10 years. Just give me 10 years, and I will definitely clean up the country for you." All the nobles and ministers were silent. None of them had the right to interrupt this conversation between the father and son of the Yang family. However, Yang Xuanji's decisiveness, confidence, and even his cruel and cold side gave many of those who were lost the confidence they had. It gave them a glimmer of hope. It was as if there was still hope in this unstable country. As long as the old ruler admitted his guilt, ceded a piece of land, asked for peace, and left with shame, a new ruler would take over the throne, and the people would be united against a common enemy. It was as if they could see the possibility of the country returning to its former glory. They dreamed of the time when Zhaoheng City was still called Tianxiong City. However, Yang Jinda sat on the dragon throne, casting a heavy shadow on the ground. To put it simply, you want to compromise and endure hardships? The 27th emperor of the Yang country asked. "Isn't that what your old man is doing and has been doing for so many years?" What a disappointment. The emperor of the Yang country stood up from the dragon throne. "You were allowed to govern the country in the past, and you were in charge of the country's affairs. Today, you push me to the imperial court. Do you want me to bear the responsibility of the country's destruction?" Yang Xuanji, he pointed at his son, who was standing opposite Emperor Dan. "You don't even have the courage to bear the responsibility of the country's destruction. How can you talk about revenge?" Yang Xuanji was shocked. He wanted to say something to defend himself. However, Yang Jinda had already opened his palm and pressed it down. With a flip of his palm, heaven and earth flipped. It was as if an endless bloody light had swept Yang Xuanji away and returned to his palm. Yang Xuanji, who had never slacked off in his cultivation and was an intermansion realm cultivator, could not even withstand a single blow. He was crushed with a flip of his palm. Then he disappeared from the court, right before the eyes of the ministers of Yang court. Yang Xuanji's trusted aides and henchmen were prepared to force the emperor to abdicate. However, they did not expect that the crown prince would be gone before they could do anything. "Your Highness," Yang Xuanji's most trusted subordinate rushed to the spot where his flesh had disappeared and howled in the direction of the dragon throne. "You're a fatuous ruler who brings disaster to the country." However, he was only halfway there when Lu Huai took his head. Only a headless corpse was left, and it fell in front of Emperor Dan. Lu Huai held the head in his hand and turned around. He said respectfully, "This person plotted against the emperor. Please execute his entire family." "Forget it." Yang Xuanji waved his hand indifferently. The Blood Demon Book of Annihilation. At this moment, an old minister recalled the book's origin and said angrily, "Your Highness, how could you learn such a demonic technique?" The Blood Demon Book of Annihilation was said to be one of the demonic techniques created by the ancestor of the demonic path. The cruelest part of this technique was that one had to devour one's own blood in order to master it. It was the true Blood Demon Book of Annihilation. This old subject was in charge of offering sacrifices, and he had only seen the introduction of this technique in ancient books. Demonic techniques were demonic techniques, mostly because they were cruel and went against human nature. They were shameful to the world. At this moment, Yang Jinda stood in front of the dragon throne with his hands behind his back. His face was covered in a layer of bloody light. "You useless people can't even help my son maintain the power of the country. Don't give me any more pointers." "Lu Huai," he ordered indifferently, "summon all my princes and princesses to the palace." Lu Huai's heart trembled. He obviously knew the meaning of Yang Jinda's order. He was simply going all out and wanted to kill all his descendants to complete the demonic technique. However, since the king had made up his mind, he could only bow and accept the order. For a moment, all the ministers in the hall were kneeling on the ground. There were no curses, but most of them were crying and begging the king to wake up. Crying from day to night, crying from night to day, crying until old Jiang dies. Yang Jinda waved his sleeves angrily. "Shut your mouths, you useless people." Although all the ministers were kneeling in the hall, Yang Jinda stood on top of Emperor Dan. His hair and beard fluttered in the wind, and his dragon robe fluttered in the wind. He gave off an especially lonely feeling. The shame of the country's collapse, the shame of the ancestral temple being abandoned, the hatred of the country's destruction. I will bear it all. Chapter 293. Jiang Wang had been conserving his energy, even entering the great illusionary land less. He often patrolled outside Qingyang town, waiting for an opportunity. However, the first wave of uninvited guests was not from any of the parties that he had imagined. When Manager Qian appeared outside Qingyang town, he still maintained a decent appearance. At least his clothes were clean, his hair was neat, and he had more than 10 guards with him. There were 3 carriages, 2 of which were loaded with valuables and 1 with himself. Seeing Jiang Wang blocking the way outside the town, he was not worried but happy, because this meant that Qingyang town had predicted the situation in the Yang kingdom and had responded cautiously. This undoubtedly increased their safety. The man enthusiastically jumped down from the carriage and shouted loudly, "Little friend Jiang, I represent the Four Seas Business Alliance to assist Qingyang town." Jiang Wang naturally did not believe him. Although they had not interacted much, this Qian person had already left a deep impression on him. Even the tone of his voice was probably not worth believing. "Thank you for your hospitality," Jiang Wang shouted, "but Qingyang town is in lockdown. Outsiders are not allowed to enter. Please understand, Manager Qian." He turned back and ordered loudly, "Xiao Xiao, get a few people to bring the Four Seas Business Alliance's supplies over." "Okay," Xiao Xiao replied loudly. She immediately ordered 2 warriors to take over the carriage. Manager Qian's face turned green. Seeing the Qingyang town warriors walking over, he hurriedly said, "Misunderstanding. Misunderstanding. We are providing manpower this time. Manpower." Manpower? Jiang Wang was confused. "Yes," Manager Qian said shamelessly. "This is a time of crisis, and manpower is scarce everywhere. In view of our previous good cooperation, the Four Seas Business Alliance has sent 5 transcendental cultivators and 10 ordinary warriors to assist Qingyang Town. Since it's manpower, then Jiang Wang said, "Thank you." Then, he turned and walked into the town. Only Deerhorn and the Four Seas Business Alliance were left standing alone. A cool breeze blew. "Sir, please wait," Manager Qian shouted from behind. "Of course there are also supplies. The whole carriage of valuables is donated free of charge." But he was afraid that Jiang Wang would only keep the valuables. So he added, "The manpower and supplies come together." Jiang Wang stopped and turned around, smiling faintly. "Manager Qian, Qingyang Town is overcrowded now and does not lack manpower. Since it has come to this, I won't lie. Brother Jiang, you should know the situation in the Yang Kingdom. We, the people of Qi, should unite to protect ourselves. I am from Zhuang, Qingyang country being in the Yang Kingdom. We are all foreigners. If we don't unite, who in the local area will care about us? The people of Qingyang Town's very united." Manager Qian was thick-skinned. Of course, he wouldn't be stifled so easily. He immediately changed the topic and said, "The current situation is chaotic. What is most important? Transcendental force. As far as I know, other than you, there aren't many transcendent cultivators in Qingyang Town, right? Our combined strength is enough to make Qingyang Town impregnable. We have 5 transcendent cultivators." Jiang Wang glanced at the transcendents in Manager Qian's team. "Forgive me for being blunt, but none of them can make me use my sword a second time. That was too arrogant." Manager Qian himself was a transcendence in the soaring dragon realm, not to mention the Tongtian, circulatory heaven, and wandering meridians guards. But he could not refute Jiang Wang's words. No matter how strong he was, could he be stronger than Ximunin? "Sir Jiang." Manager Qian changed the way he addressed Jiang Wang and finally settled on sir. He was used to doing business and understood that there was not much room for negotiation. He could only bear with it and said, "Just tell me, what do you want to take us in? The Four Seas Business Alliance will definitely repay you." Yang Kingdom's border was sealed, so he could not return to Jia City. Because when he heard the news of the plague, he chose to escape. Thinking of the chaos in Yang Kingdom, he took all the money from the Jia City government. If he returned to Jia City now, who knew when he would accidentally catch the plague and die? He was not familiar with the rest of the places. Wandering around with money and resources during the chaos was a path to death. In the entire Jia City, only Zhenggenji's signboard, Qingyang Town, could be considered a peaceful place. Jiang Wang himself was very strong, at least stronger than the city lords of Yang Kingdom. If he could, he would not beg Jiang Wang. He was even more unwilling to stretch his neck and wait to be slaughtered. But the situation was like this, so what could he do? Every dog has its day. Back then, he went to ask for 4,000 gold for 2 eggs and received 200 Daoyuan stones. At that time, he was full of pride and could not have imagined what would happen today. What repayment in the future? That can only be said when there is a future. Don't you think so? Jiang Wang asked. This was the haggling. Manager Qian smiled apologetically. That's true. Normal wealth is not very useful at this time, because you can't buy anything even if you have money. What Qingyang Town needs are resources. Ordinary people need food, clothing, medicine, and so on. Transcendent cultivators need Daoyuan stones as a supplement. Jiang Wang paused. Yes, Daoyuan stones are very important. Manager Qian immediately understood. Speaking of which, Sir Jiang left a box of Daoyuan stones with me. I always wanted to return it, but I was entangled with worldly affairs and delayed it for a long time. I can return it to you today. Is that so? I don't remember this. Jiang Wang was very surprised. How many Daoyuan stones are there in that box? There should be 300. Manager Qian gritted his teeth. Jiang Wang said dejectedly, only 300? Maybe 500. Manager Qian's smile was already very ugly, but he said resolutely, I remember, it's 500 Daoyuan stones. Jiang Wang stared at him for a while. He knew that 500 Daoyuan stones was enough to make him feel pain, but he could not tell if it was the bottom line. After all, this kind of old fox was not easy to see through. Compared to the 200 Daoyuan stones that were extorted, it was more than double. Jiang Wang stopped and said, it is indeed a pleasant surprise to find something that was lost. However, what I am worried about is the daily necessities of the townspeople. 500 Daoyuan stones was equivalent to 5,000 Daoyuan stones, so it was not a small amount. However, compared to the wealth that Manager Qian had plundered during this disaster relief, it was actually not much. The amount of Daoyuan stones that he had thrown in Pingxi Prefecture was more than this amount. He let out a sigh of relief, and the smile on his face became real. There is no problem with daily necessities. The Four Seas Business Alliance's stall in Jia City has not been dispersed, so I can quickly transfer out a lot of supplies. Then I will leave this matter to Manager Qian. Jiang Wang finalized the cooperation and called out, Xiao Xiao, go and give the Four Seas Business Alliance's people with lofty ideals a place to stay. The conditions must be good. Sir Jiang is too polite. Manager Qian smiled and walked forward, wanted to walk side by side with Jiang Wang, but he saw that he had already walked into the town. He did not feel awkward, and instead enthusiastically called out to those behind him. Follow me into the town. From now on, we will all be family. After all, Jiang Wang was not thick-skinned enough. If it was Cheng Gengsheng, he would probably be able to put his arm around Manager Qian's shoulder and be as close as family. However, although Manager Qian, who had walked into the trap, had brought him a considerable amount of benefits, at the same time, it had also cast a shadow in front of him. If the manager of the Four Seas Business Alliance was like this, then how bad had the situation in the entire Yang country deteriorated? Could he really protect the peace of Qingyang town in such a situation? Chapter 294. What? In the town hall, Jiang Wang was shocked. After settling down, he found out from Officer Qian that the Qi army was besieging Yang. He also understood why Officer Qian was willing to compromise and let them take advantage of him. He was still too naive. If he had known about this earlier, he would have been willing to pay 1,000 Daoyuan stones, much less 500. But to this piece of news itself, what did it matter if he took more or less of a few Daoyuan stones? Qi's every move was enough to cause a commotion in the east. What's more, they were besieging Yang. Tell me clearly, Qi's army besieging Yang is to besiege Yang and stop the plague, or to swallow Yang? Jiang Wang asked. I'm just a small businessman. How can I know such a big thing? But maybe it's both. The town hall fell into a short silence. Jiang Wang was almost certain that this was Qi's big move that Cheng Gengsheng had hinted at earlier. He did not blame Cheng Gengsheng for not telling him about this earlier. Even if Cheng Gengsheng was not afraid of death, he would have stopped him. But this was indeed too sudden. If the state of Qi were to swallow up the Yang kingdom and turn the vassal state into a county under their rule, the entire territory of the Yang kingdom would have to be redistributed. This meant that all his efforts in the Yang kingdom might have been for naught, because the division after the war could only be led by Qi's army and did not involve anything else. Wait, could be that Cheng Gengsheng did not think of this. With that in mind, Jiang Wang asked, Officer Qian, have you found out who is the person leading the army to the Yang country? Officer Qian shook his head. The Four Seas Business Alliance's intelligence network has been cut off. I don't know anything about Yang. I only know that it's one of the 9 soldiers, the Qiu Offense Army. Perhaps only when the war truly begins will I be able to find out who is coming. One of the 9 soldiers was coming. His determination was obvious. As the saying goes, with a sharp blade in one's body, one's desire to kill is born. With such a powerful army coming to Yang country and easily conquering Yang country, it was hard for the higher-ups of Qi not to be tempted. Jiang Wang could only think that Cheng Gengsheng must be in the army at this moment. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been unable to reply. But what role did Cheng Gengsheng play in this? How can I help him? What kind of cooperation did he need? At that moment, one of them was in the Yang Kingdom while the other was outside the Yang Kingdom. One guarded a town alone while the other was in the army. How could they cooperate when they couldn't communicate with each other? Jiang Wang felt that he had missed something, but he couldn't figure it out. She asked casually, Xiao Xiao, what do you think? Dugu Xiao did not hesitate. Xiao Xiao doesn't know anything. How can he have any opinion? Master is such a smart person. Whatever you say, we will do. This was just a small daily show of loyalty. She had been working hard to strengthen Jiang Wang's leadership position in front of Xiang Qian and Zhu Biqiao. There was nothing special about it. But when he heard this, Jiang Wang suddenly had an idea. That fatty is much smarter than me. If I can think of cooperating with him, he won't not think of me in Yang country. In a situation where we can't communicate, if he needs me to do something or wants to tell me something, what will he do? Or could he have already done something? Jiang Wang looked at Manager Qian again. He finally understood what he had overlooked. Manager Qian, I just remembered something. He asked, I heard from the guard in the warehouse that you left Yang country a long time ago. Why did you suddenly turn back? Logically speaking, even if the Qi army is in the sealed state, they shouldn't have intercepted the Qi people, right? When one is unlucky, even cold water will get stuck in one's teeth. Manager Qian had always thought that he was expelled from Pingxi County because he hid his harvest and bribed the army, thus missing the initial opportunity to escape back to Qi country. It was inconvenient to say everything in front of Jiang Wang. He smiled bitterly and said, I'm used to being filial to the military, but I didn't expect to meet such an impartial person who chased me back. After that, I turned to another place and was forbidden from passing. It's not busy. What's the situation everywhere? Tell me in detail. Manager Qian began to pick and choose. So, Qin Yong and the rest are still in the military camp outside Baichuan City? Yes. Manager Qian scolded. I'm only one day late, and those stinky military leaders are not allowed to pass, even if they are in the military camp. Hearing this, Jiang Wang was 80% sure. Now, Cheng Gengsheng was very likely in Baichuan City and had a certain amount of military power. This Manager Qian was the informant that he sent back. He knew very well how Jiang Wang managed Qingyang Town, and he also knew that Manager Qian, who fled with the money, had nowhere to go in the Yang country. He used Manager Qian to vent Jiang Wang's anger, and also to let Jiang Wang use Manager Qian's resources to supplement. He also told Jiang Wang that he was here, and the most important thing was that Cheng Gengsheng also needed him to protect Qingyang Town. Manager Qian, I'm sure you know the current situation. Jiang Wang stood up and said, At this time, we must focus our efforts in one place. If we are scattered, we will be weak. Your people, including you, are now under my command. What do you think? I think it's very good. Sir Jiang is a young hero. What he said is right. Manager Qian appeared to be awe-inspiring. Of course, whether he had any objections in his heart was unknown. Fortunately, Jiang Wang didn't need to consider his inner thoughts. He only needed him to transfer as much of the Four Seas Business Alliance's resources in Jia City. And it was worth mentioning that this day was already the 26th of July, the last two victims of the plague in Qingyang Town. One died of illness, and the other recovered. It was as if the past and the future existed at the same time. Zhaoheng City, in the palace hall. The courtiers had already retreated. The king of Yang country, Yang Jianda, was half-squatting, personally picking up something on the ground. It was some fragments of clothes and accessories. The material was faintly discernible and luxurious. Naturally, there wouldn't be any flesh and blood left behind. The fragments that were left behind were all damaged by the owner's struggle. Eunuch Lu Huai had been waiting by the side. Yang Jianda casually asked as he picked up the fragments, Where's Xuanzi? Lu Huai bowed and said, He's not in Zhaoheng City or Tsangfeng City. I don't know where he went. The situation is too chaotic now. I still need some time. Forget it. Yang Jianda straightened up and held the messy fragments in his hand. He said lightly, "The Yang country situation today is my fault. It's also good if a descendant can be left. How can we blame your majesty now?" Lu Huai's tears flowed down. 3 generations ago, the Yang country was already a vassal country. When the late king was still alive, the last strong army of the Yang country was destroyed, and the capital had to be renamed Zhaoheng City. After defeating the Xia country, she no longer had any opponents in the eastern region. Our Yang country is also weak. After your majesty ascended the throne, he faced such a situation. Even if your majesty's civil and military skills are not inferior to others, how can you turn the situation around? Zhaoheng is bright, which is our Yang country. Zhaoheng is stable, which is the current situation. It sounds nice, but it's just a struggle at death's door. Yang Jianda sighed and waved his hand. I'm useless, and my son is also useless. Don't push the blame to my father. He took a few steps forward and put the fragments in his left hand into Lu Huai's arms. Keep them well. After Lu Huai held them respectfully, Yang Jianda turned and walked out of the hall. Although the hall was luxurious, it was a little dim. Perhaps it was because the palace was too dark and the lights were not bright enough. However, it was bright outside the hall, and the sun was shining brightly. Write a letter of credence and beg Chongxian Chu Liang to surrender. Add a jade seal and invite him to the palace for a chat, Yang Jianda said as he walked. His footsteps were not fast, but each step was very far. Lu Huai just looked up and saw that his king was already standing at the door of the hall. The figure that was not very tall seemed to be standing at the boundary between light and darkness. There was light in front of him, but he did not want to walk in. There was darkness behind him, but he could not fall. Only his voice seemed to come from another world. It was very clear, but also very far away. I want to see. 30 years have passed. Xiong Tu can still eat. Chapter 295. Very few people knew that 30 years ago, Yang Jianda and Chongxian Chu Liang had fought side by side. That war that swept across the entire eastern region and affected the world was the decisive battle for the overlord of Qixia. At that time, Yang Jianda and Chongxian Chu Liang each led an army and defended the Crescent Valley together. Together, they withstood 13 waves of attacks from the Xia army and firmly held the position. At that time, both sides had millions of soldiers and the battle was in full swing. The battle line between the two sides was hundreds of miles long. This was a long and fierce battle. Before the end of the battle, no one could predict the outcome. But at this time, Yang Jianda and Chongxian Chu Liang had different opinions. Yang Jianda thought that they were already exhausted and should withdraw to rest and plan for victory. They had already done a great deed by defending the Crescent Valley. If they lost the Crescent Valley, they would be guilty even if they won. However, Chongxian Chu Liang insisted on launching a counterattack. In the end, Yang Jianda chose to withdraw and rotate the troops. However, Chongxian Chu Liang was so bold that he directly gave up on the Crescent Valley before the rotating troops arrived. He led his troops and defeated the retreating troops of the Xia army again. Then he chased the defeated troops and broke through 3 lines of defense, breaking into the rear of the Xia army in one fell swoop. Then he killed people and massacred cities, cutting off food and land, in a series of heroic deeds that made him take the title of Fierce Butcher. Now that more than 30 years had passed, Yang Jianda, who had changed his appearance, was already the ruler of a country. And that fat man who was usually gentle and kind, but went crazy when he went on the battlefield, became a famous general that no one in the entire Qi army could ignore. Yang Jianda invited him with a letter of credence. He wanted to see if Chongxian Chu Liang, who had fought side by side in the past, still had the courage to go thousands of miles alone. Surrender? Why do you say so? In the military tent, Chongxian Chu Liang held the letter of surrender with a look of surprise. The Yang envoy standing in front of the tent was full of grief and indignation. He said with humiliation, "General, Why do you ask when you already know the answer? He was about to cry when the country was humiliated, but he did not want to be weak in front of the Qi people, so he forced back his tears. The Qi-Yang alliance for 4 generations. If Qi attacked, the Yang kingdom would not disobey. If Qi Dan was in trouble, the Yang country would help. May I ask, Marshal, what crime did my Yang country commit to provoke such a calamity? Inside the tent, the generals of the Qi army remained silent. Chongxian Chuliang was stunned for a long time before he sighed. The Yang Lord has such a deep misunderstanding of me. He has such a deep misunderstanding of the Qi. The plague in Yang country this time is no small matter. It can already harm transcendence. If it was allowed to spread, there would be an unbearable calamity. As a major country in the eastern region, the Qi must stabilize the order of the eastern region. For the safety of the entire eastern region, I will not shirk my responsibility. I am here under orders to help the Yang kingdom stop the spread of the plague. Let me ask you, if our army did not come, would the Yang kingdom be able to seal its borders? Do you have such determination, such courage, and such ability? Envoy, why don't you report to the Yang Lord that the Yang kingdom belongs to the Qi kingdom, but we are comrades? Don't worry, I, Chongxian Chuliang, am here to stop the calamity. I will not step into the Yang kingdom's territory. To be sent by Yang Jinda at such a time, this envoy must not only be loyal, but he must also not be stupid. After hearing Chongxian Chuliang's reply, he was indeed relieved, but he had been relieved all the way to the abyss. Actually, the dead crown prince of the Yang kingdom, Yang Xuanji, was not a fool. At least, he was right about one thing. The Yang kingdom was a vassal state of the Qi kingdom and had always been respectful and obedient. If Qi wanted to annex the Yang kingdom, he should have considered public opinion. Especially now that Qi kingdom was not the only overlord in the world. If Qi kingdom only focused on the eastern region, it would be too short-sighted. It was impossible to make all the countries submit just by relying on military strength. Yang Xuanji had considered this point and believed that the state of Qi's expectations should only be a few cities. They would use the opportunity of trapping the plague in the name of saving the people from calamity to complete the de facto occupation without the condemnation of public opinion. Many of the Yang kingdom's officials had the same opinion. Another group of people, led by Yang Jinda, thought that Qi kingdom was at its peak and might merge the eastern region to form the eastern kingdom and then conquer the world with the western region. With such a strategy, they did not need to care about public opinion. The Yang envoy who submitted the letter of surrender also had the latter view. Until now, he realized that he was wrong. Chongxian Chuliang, or rather, Qi kingdom, cared about public opinion. However, this care was scarier than not caring at all, because this care was the result of what Chongxian Chuliang was doing now. He had already made up his mind to seal the Yang kingdom and isolate it from the outside world. Normally, the Yang kingdom could seal itself off and hold on for 3 to 5 years without a problem. However, what was the situation now? The plague had mutated and was wreaking havoc. This was the time when they needed to concentrate their forces to deal with the plague and needed help from the outside world. However, with the Qi army surrounding the border, could the Yang kingdom still concentrate their forces to deal with the mutated plague? Chongxian Chuliang's move was equivalent to forcing the people of the Yang kingdom to die within their borders. This was the vicious slaughter. Of course, he would not step on the Yang kingdom's soil because he did not need to do so personally. The plague would kill all the people of the Yang kingdom for him. Qi kingdom did not even need to bear the bad reputation because they had indeed helped the eastern region and the world to contain the terrifying mutated plague. He only needed to take over the Yang kingdom's land after this. Looking at the mild-looking chubby elder in front of him, the Yang kingdom envoy felt as if he had seen the devil. Even after leaving the military tent and being shrouded in the scorching sun, he still felt as if he was in a world of ice and snow. His body and mind could only feel the bone-chilling coldness. The Yang kingdom envoy came with a letter of surrender full of humiliation and staggered away with a heart full of despair. In the military tent, one of the generals could not help but say, "Marshal, since the Yang kingdom has submitted, why don't you go with the flow?" Subduing the enemy without fighting is the highest level of military strategy, and it shows the marshal's reputation. If there's no need to fight, why fight? Not only is the land a resource, but so is the population. With the cooperation of the Yang court, we can smoothly take over the entire Yang kingdom. We can disperse the people of the Yang kingdom and move them to different places. In less than 3 generations, they will still be our Qi people. Chongxian Chuliang looked at him slowly and asked, "General Tian, how much did Yang Jianda promise you?" This general's face turned pale instantly, and dense cold sweat covered his forehead. Even his voice was trembling. "I am loyal and devoted. Why would I collude with the Yang kingdom's traitors?" Everything he did was for the sake of Daki, for the sake of the Grand Marshal. Chongxian Chuliang looked at the other generals. "What about the rest of you? Do you also think the same?" All the generals lowered their heads, not even making eye contact, let alone making a sound. Chongxian Chuliang waited for a while before smiling. The Tian family of Dezay is indeed powerful. So many people have no objections to my decision, but you have an objection. Interesting. General Tian could not care about anything else. He knelt down with a thud, and his entire forehead was on the ground. "I wouldn't dare. I'm really stupid and inconsiderate. I'm clumsy with my words. However, this lowly one's heart is as clear as the sun and the moon. I absolutely do not have the slightest intention of disrespecting the Grand Marshal." Chapter 296. The Tian family of Days was also one of the top families in Qi. However, this was the military under Chongxian Chuyang's tent. Background was not important in the military. Chongxian Chuyang was not someone who would care about his background. Tian Antai knew very well that if Chongxian Chuyang wanted to kill him, he would not even have a chance to resist. No one would stand up for him. At this moment, he was filled with regret and wanted to cut off his own tongue. He had relied on the Tian family's reputation and was used to being arrogant. He thought that nothing would happen if he said a few words. However, he forgot whose camp this was and who the commander in front of him was. This was Xiong too. Chongxian Chuyang was silent until Tian Antai started to tremble. Then he said, "Who do you think Yang Jinda is? Do you really think he is a toothless tiger after so many years of keeping a low profile and obeying everyone? That year in Crescent Valley, he was the person who almost raised a flag and fought to the death with me." The generals in the tent looked at each other. No one expected Yang Jinda to be so reckless that he dared to raise a flag with Xiong Tuesday. "If you want me to go to Yang Court and accept surrender, how can I go? Do I go alone or with the army? If I pull up the army and go deep into Yang country and surround Hung City, what difference does it make whether they surrender or not? If you don't trust them, why should they trust you? Furthermore, if you go deep into Yang country alone, ignoring the plague, aren't you afraid of being stabbed in the pocket? Or should I go alone and show off my bravery?" Zhongshuan Chuyang sneered and said, "If this marshal dares to be greedy and go alone, Yang Jinda will dare to surround and kill me on the spot. Bravery is bravery, but it is also true that I will lose my life." "Tian Antai." Chongxian Chuyang bowed in the commander's seat. "The Tian family wants to kill me?" "Absolutely. Absolutely. Absolutely not." Tian Antai was so frightened that he could not speak coherently. He could only kowtow with all his might, making the ground creak. The Tian family had been in the limelight in recent years. Chongxian Chuyang wanted to say something more, but he suddenly stopped. Xiaoqin stood up and stepped out of the commander's tent. He looked into the distance and said coldly, "They are here." This sound was extremely short and hurried, like a ferocious blade being unsheathed, instantly bursting with killing intent. The guards outside the tent followed his gaze and determined that it was in the direction of the Sun Country's Redtail County. Redtail County. The sky above the wasteland where the snake-faced man had died suddenly rippled. White bones drilled out of the void and intertwined with each other. They quickly formed two flood dragon skeletons, as if they were alive. Soul flames lit up in the eye sockets of the skeletons. The two bone flood dragons bared their fangs and brandished their claws, biting each other's tails to form a circle. The dim light in the circle rotated, vaguely leading to a mysterious space. Then, a young man wearing a sackcloth Taoist robe walked out from the dim light. This person's appearance was neither handsome nor ugly. He stood there as if he was the center of this world. This strong sense of existence made people unconsciously overlook his appearance. The only thing he couldn't avoid was a pair of eyes. One was cold and emotionless, while the other was calm and deep. After he walked out of the dim light, he casually glanced at the ground expressionlessly. That was where the snake-faced man had died. Behind him, Lu Yin, the dragon-faced man, the monkey-faced man, and the rabbit-faced man walked out of the dim light one after another. When Zhang Linchuan killed Wei Yin and Shen Nanqi in Maplewood City, he had also opened a bone door. However, the bone door that the two bone flood dragons had bitten together was on a completely different level. At that time, the bone door communicated with the Qi of the Netherworld to set up a battlefield and increase the power of his Taoist techniques. However, the bone door that the White Bone Path Sacred Lore had opened personally used the Netherworld to penetrate tens of thousands of miles and reach the Yang realm from the White Bone Underground Palace. Its principle was similar to the White Bone escape technique, but it was much more advanced. As for the beacon, it was naturally the plague bell that had collapsed in this place. "Go," the White Bone Path Sacred Lord said in a dull tone. "Do your best to create chaos and buy time for me to create the plague incarnation." Everyone made the same gesture. They closed their ring fingers and pinky fingers, forming a triangle with their thumbs, index fingers, and middle fingers over their hearts. They chanted softly, "At the bottom of the river of forgetfulness, in the abyss of the netherworld. When the venerable God returns, illuminate the world." After chanting, Lu Yin laughed strangely and left first. The dragon-faced man looked at the rabbit-faced man. Where did the pig-faced man die? Zhang Linchuan wasn't present. The rabbit-faced man said timidly, I think he died in Jia City." "Think? Yes, he died in Jia City." The rabbit-faced man swallowed his saliva to ease his nervousness. As the most powerful person among the 12 bone faces, the dragon-faced man didn't show up often, but every face couldn't get rid of their fear of him, especially since the 12 bone faces of the White Bone Path had been divided. The rabbit-faced man was already a member of Zhang Linchuan's faction. It was inevitable that he would show more fear of the dragon-faced man. The dragon-faced man said directly, "Lead the way." Then he turned to the monkey-faced man and said, "You come with us." The rabbit-faced man didn't dare to refuse. The monkey-faced man just shrugged and looked indifferent. From the beginning to the end, the sacred lord of the White Bone Path didn't interfere with their actions. He let them decide where to go and what to do. After these people left, he said indifferently to the bone gate in the air, "Emissary, watch the underground palace. Don't leave without permission. Welcome me at any time." On the other side of the bone gate, Zhang Linchuan's respectful voice sounded, "Yes, sacred lord." He asked Zhang Linchuan, who planned the plague and chose the location, to stay in the Bone Underground Palace and bring Elder Lu Yin out. It wasn't that the sacred lord of the White Bone Path didn't trust his followers. It was just the instinctive caution of a superior. It was a simple check and balance. After giving the order, the sacred lord looked up at the sky. The bright sunlight made him squint his eyes slightly. He had expected the danger of this trip, but he didn't care. No matter when it was, a plague that wreaked havoc in a country was not tolerated by the world. This body was very useful. It was too useful. There was just a small problem that needed to be solved. It was going to be solved soon. It was worth taking a little risk for this. He walked like a person who hadn't returned home for a long time, full of nostalgia. It was humiliating to say that he had been in the world for a long time, but he rarely left the Bone Underground Palace. Emperor Zhuang and Du Ruhui's pursuit of the White Bone Path had never stopped, and he even had to hide his existence. It could be said that he was struggling at death's door. Fortunately, it was about to be solved. There was no need to do this in the future. The national spirit of this country had dissipated, and the people's hearts were in chaos. He could feel that the plague aura was moving around and wandering through various carriers. The plague aura would devour the living, and death itself would strengthen the plague aura. He walked. Every time he took a breath, he felt very satisfied. His body was adapting bit by bit and recasting bit by bit. The soul that had been fighting with him for control and had never given up finally loosened. Unfortunately, it wasn't so perfect. He remembered the young man he saw through the fragments of the plague bell that day. Unfortunately, the power was still condensing in the air at that time, and the young man ran away without looking back. Damn it, he thought faintly, but there was no resentment in his heart. In a long river of life, this was really a trivial matter. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.